Hey guys, tonight we're doing something very calm, very slow, and very Soviet. So dim the lights, put the phone face down, and let your brain clock out early. Because tonight, we're not chasing battles or revolutions or explosions. We are just existing in the Soviet Union. Of course we are. Now imagine it's evening in Moscow, not the dramatic Cold War version with spy chases and trench coats, just the normal one. The kind where people are tired, slightly underwhelmed, and standing in lines for things they don't fully want but will absolutely take if available. Soviet cinema, despite being heavily censored and wrapped in ideological bubble wrap, manages to exist as one of the more enjoyable forms of entertainment available. And that's not because the state tried extra hard. It's because talented directors and actors quietly figured out how to bend rules without snapping them. Because of course they did. Some films become beloved classics, not because they're revolutionary, but because they're familiar. One of the most famous is The White Sun of the Desert, a Soviet Eastern, basically a Western, but with sand instead of cowboys. Set during the Civil War, it mixes adventure, light comedy, and just enough patriotism to keep everyone comfortable. It's entertaining, it's safe, it's approved, and somehow it works. Released in 1970, it becomes so iconic that cosmonauts watch it before space launches. For luck, because when you're about to be fired into orbit, you don't argue with tradition. So Natasha says yes. Yes to the movie. Yes to meeting at the metro at 6. Yes to maybe trying the new cafe afterward, assuming the line doesn't stretch into next week. Cafes in Soviet cities are a small thing, but a meaningful one. They aren't glamorous. There's no cozy lighting or artistic foam designs. They serve simple food, non-alcoholic drinks, and provide something rare, a place to exist that isn't home or work. And that's enough. The metro ride itself feels almost ceremonial. The stations are absurdly beautiful, palaces underground, mosaics, statues, chandeliers, all spotless. The contrast with the peeling buildings above ground is dramatic, but no one comments on it. This is normal. This is daily. This is just how things are. The Cosmos cinema appears in that unmistakable Soviet modernist style. Big, blocky, confident. A crowd gathers even though it's a weekday. Tickets are cheap on purpose. Culture is a public good, not a product. You don't upsell popcorn, you just sit. Before the film, newsreels play. They always do. Carefully selected stories about industrial success, friendship with other socialist countries, and how chaotic life is elsewhere. The audience watches politely, not fully believing, not openly questioning. This is the routine. Then the movie starts, and people actually relax. Laughter comes easily. The desert landscapes are genuinely beautiful. The actors feel familiar, like old acquaintances. Everyone is briefly part of the same moment, and that shared experience is one of the quiet strengths of the system. Afterward, Natasha and Olga walk toward the cafe. They talk about the film, the good parts, the predictable parts. A little critique, but nothing risky. Even in the Brezhnev years, there are invisible lines, and everyone knows where they are. The cafe is crowded, but not full. They get a table. They order coffee and pastries. The quality is fine, not terrible. Not impressive, but that's not why they're here. They're here to sit. They're here to talk. They're here to pause. The conversation drifts from the movie to co-workers, to friends, to Olga's upcoming vacation. And yes, it's another sanatorium. That's how vacations work here. Every year, workers receive vouchers through workplaces or trade unions. These vacations are structured: rest, medical treatments, activities, even relaxation needs supervision. Olga is going to Sochi 2 weeks in August. The director said it was a reward for exceeding targets. Of course it was. These vouchers, called putyovki, are distributed based on merit, need, and sometimes who you know. The best resorts, especially on the Black Sea, are highly desirable. Warm weather is rare, and beaches are basically mythical. Natasha is still waiting. Last year she ended up outside Moscow. Not bad, just not southern. This is Soviet consumer life. You don't buy things, you're allocated them. Money matters less. Connections matter more. Position matters. Status quietly matters. They leave the cafe. The sky is still light. Summer nights stretch on. They walk past government buildings, squares designed for demonstrations, spaces meant to feel grand and collective. Olga mentions concert tickets. Vysotsky, she lowers her voice slightly. He's popular, but complicated. His songs push boundaries without crossing them. His concerts sell out instantly. Official records are scarce. Unofficial recordings are everywhere. This gray zone culture exists because it has to. It lets people breathe without openly challenging anything. The state tolerates it because complete control is exhausting. Weekends arrive. Saturday is still a workday, but Sunday is free in the Soviet sense. Cleaning, shopping, repairs, cooking. Apartments require constant maintenance. Materials are scarce. Tools are improvised. People become surprisingly skilled. But there's also recreation. In summer, people picnic, swim, gather mushrooms. It costs nothing. Parks offer concerts. Sports facilities exist. Basic but functional physical activity is encouraged. Of course it is. Winter shifts everything. Ice skating, skiing, walking through snow. Inside, there are chess games, lectures, amateur theater. This Sunday, Natasha visits her parents. Family gatherings matter. They offer support, information, and honesty. Conversations stretch for hours. Kitchen tables become confessionals. Her mother cooks using ingredients from everywhere: shops, markets, workplace distributions. Coffee appears from East Germany, a luxury. In the Soviet Union, instant coffee is normal, and even that disappears sometimes. They eat slowly. They talk about television. There aren't many channels, but some shows unite the country. 17 Moments of Spring comes up. Everyone watches it. Everyone talks about it. Shared culture bridges gaps. Education, occupation, location. Even in a divided system, there is a common language. After dinner, they listen to classical music. The state supports high culture, ballet, theater, orchestras. Tickets are subsidized. Broadcasts are common. Later, Natasha returns home. She prepares for the work week. 6 days on, 1 day off. Holidays break the rhythm. May Day, Revolution Day, New Year's Eve. New Year's is the favorite. It's not ideological, decorated trees, special food, gifts from Grandfather Frost. It feels warm. It feels real. Monday returns, metro rides, workplace routines, private evenings. Work defines identity. The workplace organizes life, housing, vacations, culture. Trade unions arrange outings. The collective is everything. Private life blends into public roles. One evening, Natasha attends a lecture at the House of Scientists. The topic is cybernetics, once suspicious, now cautiously acceptable. The audience is technical. Ideology fades slightly. Afterward, discussion continues in an apartment. These private gatherings are where ideas breathe. Kitchen conversations matter. They always have. This dual consciousness feels normal. Public compliance, private reflection, not hypocrisy, adaptation. The week moves on. Work, art, museums, books shared quietly, plans made casually. Leisure is limited but present. The system shapes options but doesn't fully define meaning. As Natasha prepares for sleep, her thoughts drift. Work, friends, boots rumored to be available somewhere, the small uncertainties of daily life. The room darkens. Moscow hums quietly. The state surrounds everything, but within it, life continues. Sleep approaches slowly, and for now, that's enough. Morning arrives without ceremony. The alarm rings, not loudly, just enough to remind you that time still exists. Natasha lies still for a moment, staring at the ceiling, doing the mental calculation everyone does. How much sleep did I get? And can I justify staying here 30 seconds longer? The answer is always no, but the pause happens anyway. She gets up. The apartment is quiet. Radiators click faintly. Water pipes complain. She washes her face with cold water because hot water schedules are more of a suggestion than a promise. Then tea, black, strong, unapologetic. Tea fixes nothing, but it helps you accept that nothing will be fixed today either. Outside, the city is already moving. People walk with purpose, not urgency, just direction. Everyone knows where they're going, and more importantly, they know they're not going anywhere else. Metro entrances swallow crowds whole. The escalators descend forever. It feels symbolic, but no one has time to think about that. At work, Natasha joins her department. The institute smells like paper, dust, and institutional optimism from the 1960s. The walls are lined with portraits of scientists and party officials. Some are brilliant, some are loyal, some manage to be both. Most are no longer here. Meetings begin, they always do. There is an agenda, there are comments, there is consensus. The outcome is usually predetermined, but participation matters. It creates the feeling of motion. After the meeting, actual work happens, calculations, reports, tables of numbers that will be summarized, approved, filed, and likely never read again. But accuracy matters because mistakes create attention, and attention is dangerous. Lunch happens in the cafeteria. The food is beige, that's not an insult. It's a category: soups with vague vegetables, meat that remembers being meat, side dishes that exist purely to fill space. No one complains. It's warm, it's filling, it's predictable. Conversations float across tables. Someone mentions a cousin in Leningrad. Someone else talks about a broken washing machine. Their neighbor knows a guy who might fix it, possibly, if parts exist. This is how life functions: networks of informal assistance, barter without calling it barter, favors without invoices. After work, Natasha stops by a shop, not because she needs anything urgently, but because something might be there. This is a common strategy: you buy opportunities, not items. Today, the shelves hold canned fish, cabbage, bread. Bread is always there, that's reassuring. She buys what she can carry, not too much. Hoarding looks suspicious and unnecessary. Stockpiling is what causes shortages, or at least that's what everyone is told. At home, she cooks simply: stew, potatoes, onions. She eats while listening to the radio, music, a weather report, a program discussing agricultural yields. Everything is framed as progress. Even stagnation somehow sounds like progress if narrated confidently enough. Later, she reads a book borrowed from a friend, not officially banned, just difficult to find. The pages smell old. The font is dense. It requires effort. But reading is one of the few spaces where time stretches instead of compressing. Days pass like this, not boring, not exciting, just steady. This stability is both comforting and suffocating, and most people feel both without articulating it. The weekend arrives again. This time, Natasha agrees to visit friends. They live across the city, in a newer district, concrete blocks arranged with mathematical precision, playgrounds between them, children everywhere. The apartment is small, but full. People sit wherever they fit. Tables, chairs, beds, windowsills. Food appears from nowhere. Someone brought sausage. Someone else brought cake. Bottles appear quietly. Music plays softly. Conversation overlaps. Jokes are told. Some political, some personal, all calibrated carefully. Everyone knows the limits. Everyone dances near them anyway. This is where people relax, not officially, not publicly, but here with friends, with food, with laughter that never quite becomes loud. Stories are shared about work, about childhood, about strange relatives, about someone who moved abroad. That last topic gets quieter. The room adjusts automatically. Later, as the evening winds down, Natasha helps clean up. Dishes are washed. Debates resume at lower volume. Someone quotes a poem. Everyone recognizes it. No one mentions the author's complicated relationship with the state. She leaves late. The city feels different at night. Quieter, more honest. Streetlights hum, trams rattle in the distance. The air smells like dust and leaves. At home again, she prepares for bed. She thinks about time, not in grand terms, just the passing of weeks, months, years, the feeling that things will always be roughly like this. This sense of permanence defines the era. The leadership is old. The slogans are familiar. The future feels managed. Television reinforces this. Tonight, a variety show, familiar hosts, safe humor, music performances. The audience claps on cue, but they're genuinely enjoying themselves. Then the news, the same faces, the same tone. Changes are announced, but they feel cosmetic, like repainting the same wall every few years. Natasha turns it off early. She prefers silence. She lies in bed, listening to the building breathe. Someone upstairs is moving furniture. Somewhere, a baby cries briefly, then stops. Sleep comes gradually, not heavy, not restless, just slow. The next morning, the pattern resumes, but small changes creep in. They always do. At work, there's talk of reorganization, not alarming, just a reshuffling of departments, new reporting lines, new paperwork, same outcomes. Someone mentions shortages of certain goods, not dramatic, just noticeable. Coffee disappears for a while, then returns weaker. Another colleague is waiting on an apartment upgrade. The list moves slowly, but it moves. That's important. Housing defines status. Private apartments are gold, communal ones are survivable, but exhausting. Shared kitchens, shared bathrooms, shared patience. Natasha is fortunate. She has her own place, small, but hers. This was achieved through years of work, waiting, and paperwork. Her parents helped, of course they did. Family support fills the gaps institutions leave. As months pass, seasons shift, summer fades, autumn arrives, leaves pile up, winter follows, heavy and familiar, coats come out, boots are repaired. Heating works, some days better than others, no one is surprised. Holidays approach, New Year's planning begins early, because ingredients must be sourced carefully. Fish, mayonnaise, tangerines, these matter. New Year's Eve is not political, it's emotional. It's the one night where optimism feels genuine. Television marathons begin, glasses clink at midnight, people make wishes they won't say out loud. Natasha spends the evening with friends. They watch old films, eat too much, laugh at jokes they've heard every year. At midnight, they listen to the speech. It's always hopeful, always vague, always delivered with confidence. Afterward, they toast to health, to stability, to another year. Fireworks appear sporadically, unofficial, but tolerated. The city glows briefly. Later, Natasha walks home alone. The snow crunches underfoot. The air is sharp. She feels calm, not joyful, not sad, just present. Back inside, she prepares for bed. She reflects briefly, not deeply, on another year past, on another year likely to look very similar. And somehow, that feels acceptable. The year continues the way years tend to do when nothing dramatic is scheduled to happen. Winter loosens its grip slowly, reluctantly. Snow turns gray, then disappears. Sidewalks reappear underneath, slightly damaged but still functional, which is basically the Soviet architectural motto. Natasha notices spring not because of flowers, but because coats get lighter. People stop wearing hats indoors. Metro cars feel less crowded. Someone opens a window for the first time in months, and everyone pretends the cold air isn't aggressive. At work, projects roll forward. One report replaces another. Tables of data continue their quiet march toward approval stamps. The institute receives a new directive. It uses a lot of words to say very little. This is appreciated. Clarity is suspicious. There's talk of a conference, possibly in another city, maybe Riga, maybe Kiev. It depends on funding and approvals, and whether someone more important suddenly needs the slot. Natasha doesn't expect to go, but she prepares the paperwork anyway. This is how you survive. You prepare for outcomes you don't expect. Lunch conversations shift slightly. There's more joking, more commentary about television, more references to how long certain leaders have been around. The jokes are subtle, but they exist, and that alone feels new. Someone mentions the word stagnation, not officially, of course not, but conversationally, and no one corrects them. That silence lingers longer than intended. Evenings stretch again, with daylight lingering past dinner. The city feels less heavy. People walk more, sit on benches, linger without purpose. This unstructured time is oddly refreshing. Natasha joins Olga for walks after work. They circle neighborhoods. They comment on buildings. Some are new, some are falling apart simultaneously. Both are achievements. They talk about work, less seriously than before. They talk about relationships. Olga is dating someone. He works in construction. He has opinions about everything. She rolls her eyes affectionately. Natasha listens. She doesn't offer much. She isn't lonely exactly. She just exists differently. She prefers routines, predictability, people who don't ask too many questions. On weekends, she visits markets. Farmers sell produce, not always officially, but visibly. The state looks the other way because vegetables are vegetables and ideology doesn't taste like anything. She buys apples. They're imperfect, slightly bruised, but flavorful. She considers that a fair trade. Radio programs grow more interesting. Some discussions feel more open, like someone loosened a tie somewhere high up and forgot to tighten it again. Books circulate faster. People recommend titles quietly. Mori translations appear, foreign authors, not many, but enough to notice. At the cinema, new films arrive. They still follow rules, but they bend them differently. The humor lands sharper. The characters feel tired, not heroic, just human. Audiences respond strongly, not loudly, but attentively. This feels important. At home, Natasha rearranges her furniture slightly, not for function, just to see if it feels different. It does, not better, not worse, just different. This small act of change feels oddly satisfying. Spring turns into summer again. This time, Natasha gets a vacation voucher. Not ideal, not southern, but acceptable. She's going to a lake resort. A week of fresh air, scheduled walks, medical consultations she doesn't need. She packs carefully because packing feels like control. The train ride is long, shared compartments, shared snacks, shared silence, politeness without intimacy. People exchange names, they forget them quickly. The resort is clean, organized, boring in the best way. Mornings include exercises, evenings include lectures, music plays softly everywhere. Natasha walks by the lake alone. She watches water ripple. She thinks about nothing in particular. This is rare and valuable. She writes postcards because that's what you do, not because anyone expects them, because rituals matter. Returning home feels grounding. The city welcomes her back with noise and familiarity. She resumes work seamlessly, like she never left. But something is subtly different. She notices it in conversations, in tone, in the way people complain more openly about trivial things. This is new. Trivial complaints are safer, but they're also practice. Autumn approaches again. This one feels slightly unsettled. No obvious reason, just a sense. At work, there's another reorganization. This time it actually changes things. New leadership, younger, somewhat. They use different phrases. They reference efficiency. Efficiency is not traditionally a Soviet obsession. This stands out. There's talk of reforms, a word people don't trust yet. It's been used before. It usually means paperwork. Television programs discuss transparency, another interesting word, used carefully, repeated often, like everyone is trying it out to see how it sounds. Natasha watches attentively. She doesn't analyze, she absorbs. Olga becomes more outspoken, not dramatically, but noticeably. She questions things that would have passed silently before, nothing major, just why lines exist, where resources go, why certain projects never finish. Natasha listens. She doesn't stop her. This also feels new. Winter returns again, heavy and familiar, but the mood is different. This time, the cold feels temporary, like something waiting to thaw. New Year's approaches again, the same rituals, the same foods, but the conversations are livelier, more speculative. What if things change? What if travel opens up? What if work becomes different? These are dangerous questions, but they're whispered playfully, not seriously enough to fear. At midnight, the speech sounds different. The words are similar, but the tone shifts. There's emphasis on change, on renewal, on listening. People exchange glances. No one comments, but everyone notices. Fireworks appear again, Maury this time, Maury confident. Natasha walks home later than usual. She stops briefly. She looks at the city, lights, buildings, people. She feels a strange mix of affection and uncertainty. This place has shaped her, it has limited her, it has supported her, It has frustrated her all at once. At home, she lies awake longer than usual. She thinks about the future, not in specific terms, just the possibility that it might feel different. That thought doesn't excite her. It doesn't scare her either. It simply exists. The next year begins without a clear announcement that anything is different. Yet the differences are there, in tone, in packing, in what people allow themselves to say without lowering their voices. At the Institute, new guidelines arrive. They emphasize initiative. This word feels strange on the page. It implies movement without permission. People read it carefully, trying to understand how literal it is. Meetings change shape. They last longer. There are more questions, fewer prepared answers. Some managers seem unsure how much authority they still have. This uncertainty spreads quietly. Natasha notices that mistakes are handled differently, not erased, not ignored, but discussed. This is uncomfortable for everyone. The media reflects the shift. New programs appear, discussion panels, experts disagreeing on air. This used to be rare. Disagreement was something you edited out. Now it's presented as healthy, as progress. Newspapers publish letters from citizens, critical ones. Some are clearly selected, but the tone is unmistakable. It's less congratulatory, more practical. Shops fluctuate. Some goods disappear briefly, then reappear in odd quantities. Prices adjust. This causes confusion, because price stability was one of the few constants. People react cautiously, they joke about it, but they also calculate. Olga changes jobs. She moves to a cooperative. This is new. Structures outside traditional state employment are forming. They're experimental, they're risky, but they offer something else: flexibility. Natasha stays where she is. She prefers known systems, even when they creak. Public spaces fill more often. People linger in groups, talking, debating, not organizing, just expressing. Bookshelves change. Foreign titles appear more frequently. Translations come faster. Some topics once avoided are now discussed academically. History gets re-examined, not rewritten, just rephrased. Television dramas shift tone. Characters struggle more openly. They aren't symbols. They're tired. They're flawed. This resonates. At work, Natasha attends a seminar on restructuring. It uses optimistic language. It promises efficiency. It avoids specifics. This is familiar territory. Yet afterward, people talk about it seriously, not dismissively. Housing discussions intensify. Waitlists are questioned. Allocation criteria reviewed. Nothing changes immediately, but the fact that it's discussed publicly feels significant. Transportation falters occasionally. Maintenance lags. Budget priorities shift. This inconveniences everyone, and everyone notices. This visibility of problems feels new. Previously, issues were smoothed over. Now they're acknowledged. Some people are energized. They talk about opportunity, about modernization, about catching up with the world. Others are anxious. They value predictability. They distrust speed. Natasha exists somewhere in between. She observes. She adapts slowly. She attends a public lecture at the House of Culture. The speaker discusses economic reform. The audience listens intently. There are questions, real ones. No one interrupts. No one claps excessively. Afterward, people cluster outside, discussing quietly engaged. This kind of engagement wasn't encouraged before. Now it's tolerated, perhaps even wanted. At home, Natasha organizes papers, documents from years of work. She notices how many procedures no longer exist, how many stamps belong to offices that have merged or disappeared. She keeps them anyway. Habits persist. Summer arrives again. The city feels restless, not celebratory, just alert. Markets expand, more private sellers, more variety, more inconsistency. Prices fluctuate daily. This requires attention. People adjust, they always do. The metro runs as usual, the stations still gleam, the escalators still descend endlessly, some things remain untouched. Conversations on trains grow louder, not reckless, just less restrained. Political jokes circulate more openly, they're still cautious, but the audience has widened. At work, staff turnover increases, some leave, some transfer, some retire earlier than planned. The demographic shifts subtly. Younger employees speak more, they challenge procedures, they reference ideas from abroad. Older colleagues respond differently, some resist, some listen, some withdraw. Natasha mentors a new hire. She's curious, impatient. She asks why things are done a certain way. Natasha answers honestly. Sometimes the answer is because that's how it is. This no longer satisfies. Public holidays feel different, the rituals remain, but the meaning shifts, the speeches feel provisional. New Year's approaches again, the planning feels less certain, expenses are calculated more carefully, ingredients are harder to predict. But people still prepare, they always do. The city remains itself, concrete, blocks, memories layered into streets. Change is happening, not dramatically, not cleanly, but steadily. And everyone is learning how to exist inside it. By now, adjustment has become the main skill everyone is quietly developing, not officially, not listed on any resume, but practiced daily. The ability to absorb new information without reacting too quickly, the ability to wait and see, the ability to pretend nothing surprises you anymore, even when it clearly does. At the Institute, the structure keeps shifting, job titles change, reporting lines move, desks are reassigned. People who once approved everything now ask for feedback. This feels backward, but no one says that out loud. Natasha notices how language evolves. Memos use softer verbs. Proposals suggest instead of instruct. Directives encourage instead of demand. These differences seem small, but they require more thinking, more responsibility, more interpretation. Responsibility is complicated. When something goes wrong, you can't always point upward anymore. This unsettles people. Workloads fluctuate. Some weeks are overwhelming. Other weeks feel oddly empty, like the system hasn't decided what it wants yet. Salaries adjust inconsistently. Some people earn more, some less, some are paid late. This creates quiet tension, no shouting, just recalculation. Shops become unpredictable, variety increases, consistency disappears. You can find things you've never seen before and fail to find basics you assumed were permanent. People start carrying bags everywhere, not because they plan to shop, but because they might encounter opportunity. Markets feel alive, loud, not chaotic, just energetic. Sellers advertise confidently, buyers negotiate openly. This was once frowned upon, now it's practical. Natasha learns prices by memory. Bread today, cheese tomorrow, fruit varies hourly. This mental arithmetic becomes second nature. Public transportation reflects the strain. Trains delay occasionally. Buses break down more often. Explanations are vague, but acknowledged. Acknowledgement changes everything. It doesn't fix problems, but it validates frustration. At home, Natasha repairs things more carefully. Replacements aren't guaranteed. She maintains what she has. She keeps notebooks for expenses, for schedules, for contacts. She's never needed so many names before. Olga thrives in this environment. She adapts quickly. She enjoys negotiation. She likes deciding things herself. Her cooperative expands, then contracts, then expands again. She complains, but with energy. They meet regularly. They compare notes. This has replaced small talk. Television programming grows bolder. Historical documentaries revisit topics with new angles. Interviews include uncomfortable questions. Archival footage appears with minimal commentary. Viewers notice omissions as much as inclusions. Foreign news coverage increases. The world feels closer, not friendly, just visible. People discuss travel seriously now, not as fantasy, but as logistics, passports, visas, costs. A neighbor applies to visit relatives abroad. It takes months, but it happens. This becomes a story everyone follows. At work, a delegation visits from another country. they speak openly, they ask direct questions. The meeting feels informal but purposeful. Afterward, staff debate their impressions, not ideologically, practically. Education reforms are announced. Schools experiment with curricula. Universities revise requirements. This creates confusion for parents and opportunity for students. Natasha hears younger colleagues discuss career paths that don't involve lifelong institutional loyalty. This is new. Housing discussions intensify. Privatization is mentioned. Cautiously, apartment ownership enters conversation. People react emotionally. This touches stability directly. Some are excited, some are terrified, some don't believe it will actually happen. Maintenance of buildings declines slightly, budgets shift, responsibilities blur, residents organize informally, they clean hallways, they coordinate repairs. This self-organization feels empowering and exhausting. Public discourse grows louder, not aggressive, just persistent. People expect explanations now, they request justification. Officials respond unevenly, some adapt, some retreat. Natasha attends another lecture. This one is crowded. The speaker discusses economics using charts. Foreign terms are explained patiently. The audience follows closely. Questions are sharp, not hostile, but informed. Afterward, discussions spill outside. People exchange opinions without lowering voices. This visibility feels risky and necessary at the same time. At home, Natasha listens more than she speaks. She processes slowly. She prefers observation over participation. Her routines remain, but they're adjusted constantly. Timing changes. Plans remain flexible. She notices how quickly yesterday's certainty becomes today's outdated assumption. Seasonal rhythms persist. Winter still arrives. Boots still wear out. Heating still fluctuates. But expectations shift. People plan less rigidly. They hedge. New Year's approaches again. This time, the preparations feel cautious. Fewer assumptions, more alternatives. Television addresses the changes openly. Special programs analyze outcomes, not intentions. This is refreshing and unsettling. Natasha watches attentively. She recognizes faces. She remembers previous narratives. She notices differences. The city itself feels louder. More cars, more signage, more private businesses. Street life diversifies. Food stalls appear. Music plays publicly. This wasn't planned. It emerged. With emergence comes disorder, and creativity, and uneven results. People complain more openly, but also laugh more freely. This combination is strange, but real. At work, another restructuring occurs. This time, Natasha's department merges with another. She gains new colleagues, new tasks, new expectations. She adapts slowly, but effectively. Performance reviews are introduced. They emphasize outcomes. This requires self-promotion. She finds this uncomfortable. She learns anyway. The institute offers optional training, workshops on management, on communication, on foreign collaboration. Attendance is voluntary, but encouraged. Natasha attends selectively. She listens. She takes notes. She doesn't rush to conclusions. Her apartment becomes a quiet refuge. She limits visitors. She prefers controlled environments. Olga visits often. They talk through possibilities, work, money, future. Neither claims certainty. They compare probabilities. Outside, the city continues adjusting. Failed ventures appear. Successful ones expand. Signs change. Slogans disappear. Public art shifts tone. Murals reference ideas instead of symbols. Bookshelves change again. More biographies, more memoirs, personal accounts emerge. History feels less distant, more personal, more complicated. Natasha reads selectively. She prefers analysis over confession. She notices how memory is renegotiated, not erased, not fixed, just expanded. This expansion feels heavy, but honest. Daily life continues within this shifting frame. Work, shopping, meetings, conversations. Nothing collapses, everything stretches. By this point, existing inside uncertainty no longer feels temporary. It feels structural, like something that has settled in and unpacked its bags. Everyone adjusts their posture accordingly. You don't lean too hard on anything. You don't assume support will be there tomorrow. But you also don't assume collapse, because nothing has actually collapsed. It has just shifted sideways. At the Institute, the merged departments are still figuring out what they are. The organizational chart changes twice in 1 month. New titles appear, some disappear. People update signatures carefully because titles matter even when they don't. Natasha is given responsibilities that used to belong to 3 different people. This is presented as an opportunity. It is also presented as temporary. These 2 ideas quietly contradict each other, but no one points that out. She manages by creating systems, notes, checklists, folders. She categorizes uncertainty until it becomes manageable. Meetings now include words like strategy, vision, initiative. These are borrowed terms. They sound ambitious, but slightly foreign. People repeat them carefully as if pronunciation matters. Younger colleagues embrace this language. They reference examples from abroad. They talk about models and benchmarks. This creates a generational texture in conversations. Older staff listen politely. They contribute selectively. They remember when other words meant everything. Disagreements surface more often. They are handled inconsistently, sometimes encouraged, sometimes quietly redirected. This inconsistency keeps everyone alert. Paydays remain unpredictable. This causes low-level stress, not panic, just calculation. People adjust spending, they delay purchases, they prioritize essentials, they still buy small comforts because morale matters. Markets continue expanding, prices fluctuate daily. This trains people to compare, to negotiate, to walk away. Natasha becomes good at timing. She knows when shipments arrive. She knows which stalls discount late. She knows which vendors are flexible. This knowledge feels practical. It also feels like something she shouldn't need, but she needs it anyway. Public transport becomes louder, not because people shout, but because silence is no longer enforced by habit. Conversations happen openly, opinions are shared casually, some are informed, some are not, but they exist. Political discussions appear in unlikely places: hair salons, bus stops, stairwells. They're not formal, they're observational. Someone always says, "We'll see," and everyone nods. At home, Natasha receives new documents about housing. Ownership options are outlined. They are complex. They involve paperwork, fees, and legal language that feels intentionally dense. She reads carefully. She doesn't rush. This decision carries weight. Neighbors discuss it constantly. Some are eager. Some distrust the process. Some wait for someone else to go first. The building forms a committee. This would have been unusual before. Now it's necessary. They meet in the stairwell. They argue politely. They compromise imperfectly. Maintenance becomes a shared responsibility. This creates friction, but also ownership. Olga thrives in this chaos. Her cooperative diversifies. They experiment, they fail, they recover. She complains loudly, she laughs often. She invites Natasha to join. She explains the benefits: flexibility, control, potential income. Natasha listens. She asks questions. She doesn't commit. She prefers incremental change. Media continues evolving. Television debates grow sharper. Interviewers interrupt. Guests push back. This still feels slightly shocking. Newspapers publish investigative pieces. They expose inefficiencies, not always corruption, sometimes just incompetence. Readers react strongly. Letters flood in, some supportive, some defensive. The idea that systems can be criticized publicly without immediate consequences still feels fragile. Foreign visitors increase. They walk visibly. They ask questions. They compare. Local businesses adapt signage. Multilingual menus appear. Some translations are creative. Tourism feels surreal. People who once imagined leaving now host visitors. Natasha notices herself explaining things. She explains routines, history, context. She hears how it sounds to outsiders. This external perspective reframes familiar landscapes. Work travel becomes possible. She attends a conference in another city. This time, it actually happens. The train is crowded. The atmosphere feels purposeful. People discuss projects. They exchange cards. This was rare before. The conference itself is chaotic. Presentations run late. Equipment malfunctions. Translations lag. But the discussions are engaged. People debate openly. They disagree without apology. Natasha presents her work. She speaks calmly. She answers questions honestly. She doesn't oversell. She doesn't minimize. The response is positive. This surprises her, not because the work is new, but because acknowledgement feels different now. She returns home tired, but alert. At the institute, her role solidifies slightly, not officially, but functionally. People consult her. They rely on her continuity. This creates quiet pressure. She manages it carefully. Economic changes ripple outward. Small businesses open, some close quickly, others stabilize. Street-level entrepreneurship appears, repairs, services, food, stalls. This activity energizes some areas and overwhelms others. Noise increases, choices multiply. Education shifts again. Programs emphasize skills over ideology. This feels practical. Students appear more assertive. They ask direct questions. They challenge outdated material. Teachers adapt unevenly. Some embrace the change, some retreat. Natasha mentors again. This time the questions are sharper. Why does this process exist? Who benefits? What happens if we change it? She answers honestly. Sometimes the answer is, I don't know. This is now acceptable. Public institutions adopt feedback mechanisms, surveys, comment boxes, online forms. This creates the illusion of control and occasionally the reality. People participate cautiously. Winter arrives again. This one feels heavier. Energy costs fluctuate. Supplies tighten temporarily. This triggers anxiety. But systems respond. Adjustments are made. Explanations offered. The explanations matter. Holiday preparations are restrained. People plan within means. They improvise. Television addresses economic realities directly. Special programs explain inflation, markets, transitions. The tone is educational, not triumphant. Natasha watches. She understands more. She worries appropriately. Social circles change. Some friends move. Some pursue opportunities elsewhere. Some return disappointed. Movement becomes common. Stability becomes optional. At work, new collaborations form with private firms, with foreign partners. Contracts are complex. Legal departments expand. This bureaucratic growth feels ironic. Natasha learns new procedures. She updates her systems. Her daily routine remains anchored. Morning tea, metro, work, evening preparation. This consistency provides structure. Olga experiences a setback. Her cooperative loses a contract. She reacts strongly, then recalibrates. She finds alternatives. They talk through options calmly. This would have been unthinkable years ago. Public celebrations feel muted. Symbols are reconsidered. Some remain. Some are retired quietly. Public spaces reflect this shift. Statues are discussed, not removed immediately, just contextualized. History becomes layered, not replaced. Natasha attends an exhibition about recent decades. It presents multiple perspectives. It avoids conclusions. Visitors move slowly. They read carefully. They discuss quietly. This approach feels appropriate. At home, Natasha organizes photographs, documents from childhood, school, work. She notices how institutional imagery has changed: logos, fonts, language. She labels boxes carefully. The city continues evolving. Roads repair unevenly. Construction projects start and stop. private initiatives fill gaps. People complain, they also adapt. The idea of permanence feels outdated. The idea of constant change feels exhausting. Everyone lives somewhere between these extremes. By now, the unfinished has become the default state, not as a crisis, not even as a complaint, just as the background condition everyone quietly accepts. Plans exist, but they're provisional. Timelines exist, but they're flexible. Outcomes exist, but only as rough sketches. At the Institute, the idea of long-term planning is discussed frequently and practiced cautiously. Strategic documents are drafted. They include projections, scenarios, and contingency clauses for contingencies that already have contingencies attached. This makes the documents thick and oddly reassuring. Natasha contributes to these drafts. She's good at identifying risks. She's learned that optimism without buffers is just negligence with better branding. Her reputation shifts subtly. She's no longer just reliable, she's steady. In an environment where enthusiasm spikes and crashes, this becomes valuable. Management notices. They involve her earlier in decisions. They ask for assessments instead of approvals. This changes the tone of interaction. It also increases responsibility. Younger staff seek her out. They want advice that isn't motivational. They want realism. She provides it carefully. She avoids discouragement. She avoids false certainty. The Institute partners with a private firm. The collaboration is awkward. Cultures clash. Timelines conflict. Expectations misalign. Meetings stretch on. Lawyers appear. They ask questions that seem unrelated but aren't. Natasha sits through these meetings quietly. She takes notes. She tracks unresolved issues. She notices patterns in who speaks and who deflects. Eventually, the partnership stabilizes, not because problems vanish, but because everyone learns where friction is tolerable. This tolerance becomes a skill. Outside work, the city continues reshaping itself. Some streets feel transformed. Cafes appear with handwritten menus and inconsistent hours. They serve strong coffee and make ambitious promises. Other areas stagnate, old signage fades, buildings wait for attention. This unevenness becomes normal. People adjust routes. They favor certain neighborhoods. They avoid others without fully articulating why. Transportation adapts. Private minibuses supplement public routes. They're faster, they're less predictable, they're crowded. Natasha uses them occasionally. She times them carefully. She accepts discomfort in exchange for efficiency. Markets evolve again. Some consolidate, some specialize. You can now find imported goods occasionally. They're expensive. They're treated as novelties. People debate value openly. Is this worth it? Is this better or just different? These conversations happen everywhere, in shops, at work, in stairwells. Media continues experimenting. Some programs push boundaries too far. They're pulled back quietly. Others succeed and expand. Journalists gain minor celebrity. They're recognized. They're debated. The idea that information itself is negotiable feels strange and powerful. At home, Natasha upgrades small things. She replaces a kettle. She buys better light bulbs. She invests in durability. She avoids large purchases. She prefers flexibility. Housing discussions resurface. Privatization progresses unevenly. Some finalize ownership quickly. Others get stuck in paperwork. Natasha proceeds cautiously. She consults. She verifies. She waits. Neighbors argue about maintenance fees, about shared responsibilities, about who owes what. This causes tension, but also engagement. People care because it's theirs now. Olga's cooperative stabilizes again. They find a niche. They deliver consistently. This reduces stress, but also ambition. She complains about routine now. This feels like progress. They meet often. They walk. They discuss finances openly. This was once taboo. Money has become a topic, not shameful, not bragged about, just discussed. At work, international collaboration increases. Documents arrive in multiple languages. Meetings require translation. This slows things down, but adds clarity. Natasha enjoys the precision required. She likes defining terms. She likes removing ambiguity where possible. Education reforms reach deeper levels. Schools adjust grading systems. Universities revise entrance exams. This creates anxiety among families. Parents compare strategies. Children attend extra courses. Private tutoring grows rapidly. Natasha observes this without direct involvement. She doesn't have children. She notes the pressure anyway. Public discourse becomes more fragmented. Multiple narratives coexist. They overlap. They conflict. People choose sources. They align unconsciously. This diversity feels empowering and disorienting. The city hosts public forums, open discussions about urban planning, about transportation, about environmental concerns. Attendance varies, but the fact they happen matters. Natasha attends one out of curiosity. The discussion is chaotic, but sincere. People argue about parking, about green space, about noise. Officials respond unevenly. Some listen, some deflect, some promise follow-ups. No one is arrested, no one is silenced. This still feels noteworthy. Work travel becomes more frequent. Natasha visits another city again. This time, there's visible private investment, restored buildings, new signage, mixed results. She notes similarities, differences. The pace varies, but the direction feels shared. Returning home, she processes experiences slowly. She updates her mental map. At the Institute, new evaluation metrics appear. They focus on output, impact, collaboration. This requires new reporting formats. Natasha adapts. She builds templates. She shares them quietly. Colleagues appreciate this. They adopt her systems. Her role solidifies further, not officially, but socially. Economic fluctuations continue, currency shifts, prices adjust, explanations follow. These explanations are debated. People learn economic vocabulary. They use it casually: inflation, market forces, exchange rates. This literacy changes conversations. Cultural life diversifies. Theater productions experiment with form. Music scenes fragment into niches. Exhibitions challenge expectations. Natasha attends selectively. She prefers analysis over spectacle. She reads essays. She watches interviews. She forms opinions slowly. Social circles evolve. Friendships stretch across new divides. Some drift away due to differing views. Some deepen through honest disagreement. This sorting feels natural and sad. Public holidays lose some symbolic weight. They become logistical challenges rather than ideological events. People use the time to rest, to travel, to catch up. Winter arrives again. The infrastructure holds but strains. Utilities fluctuate briefly, then stabilize. People react calmly. They've learned resilience. At work, another leadership change occurs. This time it's smoother. Transitions feel planned. The new director emphasizes continuity alongside adaptation. This resonates. Natasha is consulted during the transition. She provides institutional memory. She frames past decisions neutrally. This role suits her. At home, she continues refining routines. She optimizes shopping routes. She adjusts schedules. She balances energy. She notices how much cognitive load daily life now requires. This awareness is new. But she also notices increased agency. This balances the burden. Olga discusses expansion cautiously. She weighs risk. She calculates. She no longer leaps blindly. This moderation feels earned. Media narratives mature. They acknowledge complexity. They avoid simplistic conclusions more often. Audiences respond positively. They appreciate honesty. The city feels busier, not louder, just denser, more reactivity, more intent. Construction projects resume with clearer plans. Some finish, some don't, but expectations adjust. Public patience fluctuates. People protest occasionally, peacefully, locally. Authorities respond with explanations rather than force. This is not perfect, but notable. Natasha attends a small demonstration out of curiosity. She observes, she listens, she doesn't chant, she notes organization. She leaves early, she processes quietly. At work, new technologies are introduced. Computers become more common, software updates disrupt workflows. Training sessions proliferate, some effective, some not. Natasha adapts methodically, she learns shortcuts, she shares knowledge. Younger colleagues assist, they exchange expertise naturally. This collaboration feels organic. As years accumulate, the pace of change feels steadier, less shocking, more procedural. Uncertainty remains, but it's familiar now. People plan again, short-term, medium-term. They still hedge, but they commit more often. Natasha considers long-term options. She thinks about career paths. She evaluates stability versus growth. She doesn't rush. The city continues living inside the in-between, not transitioning, not settled, just functioning. And that functionality, imperfect as it is, becomes the new reference point. The sense of adjustment continues, not as a dramatic shift, but as a slow calibration. People recalibrate expectations first, then habits, then language. It happens quietly. At the Institute, procedures multiply, not because anyone loves bureaucracy, but because uncertainty demands documentation. Every decision wants a paper trail. Every change wants a rationale. This produces folders. Within folders, subfolders. Within those, versions. Natasha becomes fluent in versioning. She knows which draft matters. She knows which one exists only to show effort. She doesn't complain, she just tracks. Meetings acquire new rhythms. They begin with cautious optimism. They end with tentative agreements. No one slams tables anymore, that phase passed. Instead, there is a lot of nodding, not agreement, nodding acknowledgement, that alone feels like progress. Budgets are discussed openly now, line by line. This is exhausting but clarifying. Numbers replace slogans. Some people miss slogans. They were simpler. Younger analysts challenge assumptions. They ask why something was always done a certain way. Older staff sigh, then answer. Sometimes they realize there was never a good reason. This realization spreads quietly. Outside, the city's advertising changes tone. Billboards no longer promise abstract futures. They sell specifics. Phone plans, furniture, courses, language skills. Everything is about self-improvement now. This creates pressure, a subtle one. No one orders it, but it's there. Natasha notices. She feels it occasionally. She counters it with routine. Her mornings are predictable. She wakes. She prepares tea. She reviews the day. She doesn't scroll aimlessly. She avoids excess input. This discipline feels protective. Transportation patterns evolve again. Traffic increases. Public transit adapts reluctantly. New routes appear after complaints. People complain efficiently now. They know where to file reports. They expect responses, not always results, but responses. This expectation matters. Housing maintenance improves slowly. Management companies emerge. Some are competent, some aren't. Residents learn to evaluate contracts. Natasha attends building meetings. She listens, she votes, she avoids confrontation, she supports practical proposals. Repairs happen, eventually. Olga discusses long-term savings. This is new. They compare options. They laugh at terminology. They learn. Financial literacy spreads unevenly. Some embrace it, some resent it. At work, international standards become reference points. They're cited, they're debated, they're adapted imperfectly. Natasha helps translate not just language, but context. She explains why certain assumptions don't fit. She's careful. This earns respect. Cultural conversations grow more layered. Artists reference multiple eras simultaneously. Critics argue about authenticity. Natasha reads reviews more than she attends events. She enjoys synthesis. Libraries adapt. They host discussions. They curate collections. They digitize archives slowly. She visits occasionally. She appreciates the quiet. Media nostalgia cycles emerge. Programs revisit earlier decades. They frame them gently, not mocking, not glorifying. Viewers respond emotionally. They argue about accuracy. Memory becomes a shared project. At the Institute, performance reviews shift focus. They emphasize adaptability. This feels vague but practical. Natasha scores well. She doesn't resist change. She doesn't chase it either. Leadership notices again. They suggest mentorship roles. She considers. She agrees cautiously. Mentoring younger staff feels strange. She offers structure, not inspiration. She shares mistakes. She avoids grand narratives. This honesty resonates. Outside, small businesses fluctuate. Some fail, some persist. The successful ones are boring. They deliver consistently. They don't expand recklessly. This stability is admired. Cafes stabilize menus. They standardize prices. They survive. Public discourse cools slightly. The early intensity fades. People grow selective with outrage. They conserve energy. This conservation improves conversations. Education reforms settle into routines. Students adapt. Teachers adjust. Grumbling continues, but expectations stabilize. Natasha observes from distance. She notices the language of assessment evolve. Technology becomes mundane again. After novelty fades, it's just infrastructure. Emails replace memos. Messaging replaces emails. Meetings adapt. Natasha prefers clarity. She chooses tools that minimize noise. She teaches others quietly. Public spaces improve incrementally. Benches appear, lighting improves, waste management fluctuates. People notice when things work, they comment less. Whether patterns feel unpredictable, this becomes a topic. Environmental awareness grows slowly. Forums discuss pollution, urban planning, sustainability. Natasha attends one again. She listens. She notes seriousness. Work travel expands further. She visits smaller cities. She sees variation. Some places lag. Some innovate unexpectedly. She records impressions. She doesn't generalize. Returning home always feels grounding. Personal routines anchor her. She cooks simple meals. She reads. She walks. Social gatherings become less frequent, but deeper. People choose carefully. Olga's circle shrinks slightly. It strengthens. They discuss fatigue. Change fatigue is real. They acknowledge it. At work, projects span longer timelines. This reduces urgency, but increases accountability. Deadlines stretch, but expectations sharpen. Natasha thrives in this environment. She balances patience and momentum. Media experiments with long-form content. This suits her. She listens. She reads. Public trust fluctuates, but cynicism softens. People critique constructively more often. The city hosts festivals again, smaller, less grand, but sincere. Natasha attends briefly. She enjoys the atmosphere. She leaves early. Economic narratives stabilize. They accept cycles. They stop promising permanence. This realism comforts. Workplace cultures mature. They tolerate disagreement. They formalize conflict resolution. Natasha mediates once. She handles it neutrally. The outcome is acceptable, not perfect. At home, small improvements accumulate. New curtains, better storage. She values order. Time perception shifts. Years blur slightly. Change feels less episodic. This continuity is soothing. Olga discusses travel options, domestic mostly, international cautiously. They plan hypothetically, they don't rush. Public institutions communicate better, they publish schedules, they explain delays. People still complain, but less bitterly. At the Institute, a major project concludes successfully. This is celebrated modestly, cake, tea, speeches kept short. Natasha appreciates restraint. She reflects privately, progress isn't linear, but it's tangible. The city hums steadily, not booming, not collapsing. Daily life requires attention, but rewards competence. She prepares for another work week calmly. Stability arrives quietly, not announced, not celebrated. It just starts showing up consistently enough that people stop waiting for it to leave. This consistency feels unfamiliar at first. Some expect it to collapse. They keep contingency plans close. At the Institute, annual planning finally resembles planning. Documents reference previous years without qualifiers. There are fewer asterisks, fewer disclaimers. This doesn't mean confidence. It means habit. Natasha notices the language shift. Proposals say will instead of might. It's subtle, but telling. Meetings shorten slightly, agendas stick. Attendees prepare. This preparation reduces friction. There are still disagreements, but they're procedural, not existential. New hires arrive with different expectations. They assume systems will work. They're surprised when they don't. They adapt faster than older staff expect. Natasha observes this generational confidence with curiosity. It's not arrogance, it's baseline trust. She helps when it falters. She explains history concisely. She avoids nostalgia. She avoids warning too much. Outside, the city adopts routines. Seasonal rhythms feel predictable again. Festivals occur on schedule. Infrastructure maintenance aligns with calendars. People plan weekends earlier. They commit. Transportation reliability improves marginally. This marginal improvement changes behavior more than dramatic promises ever did. Housing renovations continue incrementally. Buildings age unevenly. Some receive attention, others wait. Residents coordinate more effectively. Shared chat groups appear. They argue digitally. They resolve issues faster. Natasha participates minimally. She votes. She pays. She attends when necessary. Olga discusses work-life balance now. This phrase would have sounded absurd years earlier. Now it's practical. Her cooperative enforces hours. They discourage burnout. They retain staff. This maturity feels earned. At work, professional development becomes structured. Training budgets exist. They're modest but real. Natasha attends selectively. She chooses relevance over novelty. She updates skills methodically. International collaboration normalizes. Visitors arrive without ceremony. They work. They leave. This routine interaction reduces performative behavior. Cultural production stabilizes into cycles, premieres, reviews, debates, fade-outs. Artists sustain careers. Not all thrive, but persistence is possible. Natasha attends fewer events. She values consistency. Media reduces sensationalism slightly. Long-term reporting increases. This builds credibility slowly. Audiences reward it gradually. Public trust inches upward, not uniformly, not dramatically. Education outcomes improve unevenly. Standards stabilize. Assessments align better. Parents complain less about uncertainty, more about workload. Children adapt. Environmental initiatives gain traction slowly. Waste sorting expands. Energy discussions mature. Natasha adjusts habits. She recycles. She conserves. She doesn't dramatize. Workplace leadership formalizes succession planning. This reduces anxiety. Natasha is listed as potential senior staff. She acknowledges. She doesn't react. She continues routine. Personal finances stabilize. She saves modestly. She invests cautiously. She avoids speculation. Housing decisions finalize. She completes paperwork. She secures ownership. This brings relief, not excitement. Neighbors celebrate quietly. Social norms settle. New etiquette emerges. Unspoken rules form. People know when to speak, when to wait. Public spaces feel safer not because of enforcement, but familiarity. Nighttime routines normalize. At work, project evaluations emphasize lessons learned. This encourages honesty. Failures are documented without blame. This is new. Natasha contributes openly. Colleagues reciprocate. Travel infrastructure improves slowly. Regional connectivity increases. Natasha visits family more often. Travel feels manageable. Conversations deepen. They discuss health plans. Time feels layered. Past, present, future coexist without tension. Media retrospectives contextualize recent decades. They avoid extremes. This moderation helps collective memory. Public debates become narrower but deeper. People focus on solvable issues. At the Institute, new research agendas align with practical needs. This grounds work. Natasha appreciates relevance. She mentors again. She enjoys watching confidence form. Younger staff challenge respectfully. This dynamic energizes without overwhelming. Outside, consumer culture matures. Quality becomes valued over novelty. People repair items they maintain. This pragmatism spreads. Cafes age gracefully, some close quietly, others persist. Owners recognize limits. Public art appears sporadically, it sparks brief discussion. Natasha notices. Weather patterns stabilize briefly, people relax. Seasonal planning improves. At home, routines feel effortless, she notices less. This absence of friction feels like progress. Olga considers expansion again, this time strategically. They analyze, they plan. Social gatherings remain small, intimate. People choose depth. At work, digital systems integrate smoothly, old processes retire. This reduces workload. Natasha updates documentation. She archives responsibly. Institutional memory feels secure. Public holidays regain rhythm. They're anticipated. People rest. The city breathes evenly. Civic engagement becomes quieter but steadier. Volunteers commit long-term. Natasha supports occasionally. Media literacy improves. People question sources calmly. This skepticism is measured. Education incorporates critical thinking more explicitly. Students respond. Workplace evaluations include well-being metrics. This acknowledges limits. Natasha appreciates recognition of sustainability. Years pass without markers, time compresses. Change continues, but gently. People adapt without alarm. At the Institute, long-term funding stabilizes. This allows planning beyond cycles. Natasha participates. She contributes perspective. She feels rooted. Urban planning projects complete. Some succeed, some compromise. Residents accept imperfections. Public dialogue reflects this acceptance. At home, she adjusts lighting. She optimizes comfort. Small choices accumulate. Olga reflects on early uncertainty. They compare. They laugh softly. Work relationships deepen, trust builds. Conflict resolves faster. Professional identities solidify. Natasha recognizes her role. She accepts it. She maintains boundaries. The city continues, not striving, not collapsing. Daily life flows. Competence settles in the way dust does, not dramatically, not visibly, just enough that surfaces feel familiar when touched. The systems don't impress anyone anymore, they function, and that functionality becomes the baseline expectation. At the Institute, this shows up in small ways. Reports are submitted on time, not early, not late, on time. This timing reduces stress more than any motivational speech ever could. Natasha notices fewer reminders in her calendar. She still keeps them, but she relies on them less. Trust has shifted inward. New projects begin without ceremonial launches. No speeches, no slogans, just task lists and timelines. People nod, they begin. Problems appear, they always do, but now they're categorized quickly: technical, organizational, resource-based. This categorization prevents spirals. Meetings end with action points that actually get addressed. This follow-through feels almost luxurious. Outside, the city's rhythm smooths further. People walk with purpose, but not urgency. Stores open when they say they will, mostly. Public transport delays are announced clearly. This transparency reduces irritation. Natasha appreciates being informed. She plans accordingly. Housing administration digitizes another layer. Forms move online. This creates confusion briefly, then relief. Neighbors complain less vocally. They exchange tips instead. Community notice boards evolve. They list services, events, lost items. They feel practical. Olga mentions reduce stress at work, not eliminated, reduced. This distinction matters. Her cooperative schedules rest. They rotate responsibilities. They avoid heroics. This maturity prevents burnout. Cultural life adapts to sustainability. Artists plan smaller productions. They tour locally. They build audiences gradually. Critics adjust expectations. They evaluate context. Natasha consumes culture selectively. She enjoys depth. Media adopts calmer packing. News cycles slow slightly. Analysis deepens. Audiences reward patience. Education systems standardize assessments. Teachers adjust pedagogy. Parents trust outcomes more. Children complain predictably. Environmental measures integrate into daily life, not as campaigns, as habits. Waste sorting bins become normal. People correct mistakes gently. At work, procurement processes streamline. Supplier relationships stabilize. Natasha contributes to evaluation criteria. She emphasizes reliability. Leadership agrees. Career paths clarify. Promotions follow defined steps. This reduces anxiety. Natasha advances incrementally. She accepts. Personal routines feel effortless. She wakes naturally. She prepares simply. She notices less internal resistance. Social interactions become intentional. She meets people because she wants to, not out of obligation. Conversations deepen naturally. Olga discusses aging parents. This becomes common. People navigate care options. Support networks form informally. Public health systems adapt. Services improve unevenly, but communication improves. People understand processes. At the Institute, data management improves. Archives digitize. Metadata standardizes. Natasha appreciates order. Colleagues rely on her less for troubleshooting, more for consultation. This shift feels respectful. Urban development projects emphasize maintenance over expansion. This pragmatism reduces disruption. Residents adapt. Public spaces age gracefully. Benches wear, paint fades. People accept patina. The city feels lived in. Media narratives shift toward competent stories, not heroes, just systems working. Audiences find comfort. Financial planning becomes routine. People budget calmly. Speculation loses appeal. Natasha reviews accounts quarterly. She adjusts slightly. She avoids obsessing. Technology stabilizes. Fewer updates, more reliability. Tools become invisible again. At work, cross-department collaboration improves. Shared goals align incentives. Natasha facilitates quietly. Disagreements resolve faster. Education emphasizes applied skills. This aligns with labor needs. Students transition smoothly. Public discourse values practicality. ideology recedes slightly. Problem-solving dominates. Weather events test infrastructure, it holds reasonably. People respond calmly. Community assistance activates naturally. At home, Natasha maintains plants. They thrive with minimal attention. This balance pleases her. Olga considers leadership roles. She hesitates. They discuss. She decides to try. Support matters. Professional communities mature. They share best practices openly. Competition softens. Institutional trust builds slowly. Natasha senses it in tone, in language. The city's nights feel safe, not silent, just calm. Streetlights work. Public transport runs. Daily life continues. Work evaluations include reflection, not just metrics. Natasha writes thoughtfully. She acknowledges limits. Mentorship programs formalize. She participates. She listens more than speaks. Younger colleagues grow confident. Public services solicit feedback. They respond occasionally. This responsiveness matters. Cultural memory stabilizes. People reference recent decades with nuance. Narratives balance. At the Institute, long-term research agendas solidify, funding aligns. Natasha contributes strategy. She feels useful. Urban planning integrates citizen input selectively. This improves outcomes. Residents accept trade-offs. Public patience increases. Personal goals simplify health, stability, connection. Natasha aligns actions. Olga reflects on progress. They acknowledge effort. They don't celebrate loudly. The city hums steadily, not exciting, not alarming. Just ongoing. Routine deepens further, not tightening, not loosening, just settling into muscle memory. People stop narrating their days to themselves. They just move through them. At the Institute, morning activity begins earlier, not because of pressure, because schedules align. People arrive knowing what they're doing. This clarity removes hesitation. Natasha reviews tasks automatically. She no longer rereads instructions. She trusts comprehension. This saves energy. Email traffic reduces slightly. Subject lines improve. This alone increases efficiency. Meetings now assume preparation. Late arrivals feel out of place, not shamed, just noticed. Outside, the city's soundscape stabilizes. Construction noise appears predictably, then disappears. Street vendors occupy known corners. They greet regulars. Natasha buys the same bread from the same place. The vendor remembers preferences. This small recognition feels grounding. Transportation systems settle into reliability bands. People know which routes buffer delays. They plan intuitively. Housing maintenance becomes preventative rather than reactive. This shift reduces crises. Building managers schedule inspections. Residents comply. Olga notes fewer emergencies at work. They still occur, but they're contained. Stress patterns change, peaks flatten. Cultural calendars align with seasons. Events don't compete excessively. Attendance stabilizes. Artists plan realistically. They budget time. Natasha attends a reading. She listens. She leaves quietly. Media tone continues moderating. Headlines explain rather than provoke. Audiences respond with sustained attention. Education institutions adopt feedback loops. Teachers adjust mid-course. Students engage pragmatically. Environmental initiatives embed quietly. Recycling bins appear everywhere, no announcements. At work, performance metrics mature. They emphasize outcomes over activity. Natasha appreciates this distinction. Colleagues adopt similar language. They discuss results calmly. Leadership communicates sparingly, but clearly. Career discussions become transparent. Paths are outlined. Natasha mentors again. she focuses on packing. Younger staff learn restraint. Urban infrastructure investment prioritizes repair. Roads resurface systematically. Traffic improves incrementally. Public satisfaction grows quietly. Social interactions simplify. People decline invitations honestly. This honesty strengthens trust. Olga balances commitments better. She delegates. At home, Natasha rearranges furniture slightly. She optimizes flow. Comfort improves. Financial planning integrates into routine. She reviews without anxiety. Savings accumulate slowly. Technology maintenance replaces upgrades. Devices last longer. This reliability reduces distraction. Workplace documentation standardizes. Language aligns. Natasha updates archives. She labels clearly. Institutional memory feels accessible. Public services expand digital access. Help desks respond. Citizens adapt. Civic discussions focus on specifics, not abstractions. This practicality feels new. Weather variability tests systems again. They hold. People assist neighbors naturally. Community competence grows. Cultural nostalgia softens. People reference the past without longing. They contextualize. At the Institute, external audits occur. They're thorough, they're fair. Natasha participates. She answers clearly. Results satisfy. Urban green spaces mature. Trees grow, shade increases. People linger. Public transport etiquette improves. Subtle norms spread. Conflict decreases. Media literacy courses appear. Education expands. Audiences question gently. Workplace wellness initiatives normalize breaks. People rest without guilt. Productivity improves. Natasha adjusts schedule. She protects focus. Olga reflects on progress. They recognize effort. No speeches. The city continues functioning without fanfare, without collapse. Daily life persists. Momentum develops the way weather patterns do, not suddenly, not dramatically, just enough consistency that people stop checking forecasts every hour. They trust the day will unfold more or less as expected. At the Institute, long-term projects stop feeling risky. They still carry uncertainty, but it's calculated. This allows people to invest attention without bracing constantly. Natasha notices fewer defensive emails, fewer preemptive explanations. People assume competence until proven otherwise. This trust reduces friction. Documentation improves again, not in volume, in clarity. Processes are written once, then followed. Meetings focus on decisions rather than positioning. This saves time. Outside, the city's commercial life stabilizes. Small shops adjust hours based on demand. They close early when it's quiet. They don't pretend otherwise. Customers accept this honesty. Public transport timetables become reliable enough that people stop checking apps obsessively. They glance, they move. Housing associations plan maintenance years ahead. This foresight prevents emergencies. Natasha appreciates predictability. Olga's work environment matures. They invest in training. They promote internally. This continuity reduces turnover. Cultural production embraces modesty. Success is defined by sustainability, not attention. Artists pace themselves. Media outlets maintain standards. They correct errors publicly. This builds credibility. Audiences respond with patience. Education systems refine curricula incrementally. No overhauls, just adjustments. Students benefit from stability. Environmental awareness becomes routine. Behavior changes stick. At work, collaboration tools stabilize. Platforms stop changing quarterly. This reliability improves focus. Natasha consolidates workflows. She simplifies. Leadership metrics align with team health. This reduces burnout. Career development discussions feel grounded. Urban planning projects prioritize function over symbolism. Public spaces improve usability. Residents engage constructively. Social circles settle into rhythms. People meet less often, but with intention. Conversations deepen naturally. Financial markets stabilize modestly. People plan conservatively. Natasha maintains balance. Technology recedes into background. It supports rather than demands attention. Workplace culture rewards consistency. Natasha receives recognition quietly. She accepts. Public discourse matures. People tolerate nuance. Debate remains, but tone softens. Weather patterns shift again. Infrastructure adapts. Communities respond calmly. At home, routines hold. She adjusts small things. Life feels navigable. Olga reflects on early chaos. They acknowledge learning. No nostalgia, just understanding. The city continues operating, steady, not perfect, not fragile. Daily life unfolds. The days begin to feel longer not because there are more hours in them, but because fewer of those hours are spent bracing for disruption, and that absence of constant vigilance stretches time in a subtle way, making ordinary routines feel fuller, more inhabited, more evenly weighted across the day. At the Institute, mornings unfold with a kind of quiet confidence. People arrive not scanning for problems, but already thinking several steps ahead, and this forward orientation changes the texture of work, because attention is no longer consumed by damage control, but freed for refinement, adjustment, and maintenance, which turns out to be more demanding in its own calm way. Natasha moves through her responsibilities with an ease that would have felt impossible years earlier. She opens documents knowing exactly what they contain. She reviews data with an instinctive sense of what matters and what can wait. And this discernment saves time, energy, and emotional bandwidth without ever feeling like efficiency theater. Projects extend over months, sometimes years, and this duration is no longer frightening. It simply requires packing meetings are spaced appropriately, updates are meaningful rather than performative, and progress is measured not in urgency, but in consistency, which suits her temperament. Outside the Institute, the city stretches into itself. Neighborhoods develop distinct rhythms, some wake early, others bloom late, and people adjust intuitively, choosing routes, schedules, and habits that align with these patterns rather than fighting them. This alignment reduces friction in ways that are hard to quantify but easy to feel. Public transport hums along in its familiar imperfect reliability. Delays still happen, but they no longer dominate the narrative of the day. People absorb them with a kind of practiced flexibility. Conversations continue, plans adjust, nobody panics. Housing conversations evolve from crisis to care. Discussions focus on insulation, maintenance, seasonal preparation, long-term, where rather than emergency repairs, and this preventative mindset spreads slowly but decisively. Natasha attends another building, meeting this one shorter, calmer, more procedural. Neighbors speak in measured tones. Disagreements surface, but remain contained. There is a sense that problems are solvable even if solutions take time, and that shared belief changes everything. Olga mentions feeling tired but not exhausted, and the distinction matters. Fatigue that comes from sustained effort rather than constant uncertainty is easier to manage. It allows for rest that actually restores rather than merely pauses the strain. Cultural life continues its slow diversification. Events no longer compete for attention in desperate clusters. Instead, they space themselves naturally. Audiences choose thoughtfully. Attendance stabilizes. Artists stop chasing novelty for survival and focus, instead on craft, longevity, and quiet relevance. Natasha listens more than she watches now. She absorbs long interviews, essays, recorded conversations that unfold without urgency. She prefers content that trusts the listener to stay. Media adapts to this preference. Some outlets fail, some adjust. Those that remain cultivate tone rather than volume, and this tonal consistency builds a strange intimacy. Audiences feel known rather than targeted. Education systems mirror this shift. Classrooms emphasize continuity, curricula evolve through iteration, teachers gain confidence, students experience fewer shocks, fewer sudden reversals, expectations settle. Environmental conversations grow more grounded, less catastrophic, more practical. Waste reduction, energy efficiency, urban greenery, discussed in terms of feasibility rather than apocalypse, and this framing encourages participation rather than paralysis. At work, technology finally recedes from center stage. Tools function, updates arrive sparingly, compatibility issues decline. Natasha notices how little she thinks about infrastructure now and recognizes that as a sign of maturity. Leadership communicates less frequently, but more clearly. Decisions are announced with rationale. Follow-through is visible. Trust accumulates slowly through repetition. Career trajectories flatten in a good way. Fewer dramatic leaps, more gradual advancement. People plan lives around steady growth rather than sudden opportunity. This stability allows for choices that consider health, relationships, long-term satisfaction. Natasha reflects occasionally, not nostalgically, but analytically. She notes how her internal posture has changed, how she no longer anticipates disruption as default, how she allows herself to assume continuity without feeling naive. Social gatherings become rarer, but richer. When people meet, they stay. Longer conversations wander unhurried through work, family, memory, speculation, without needing to perform opinions. Olga hosts a small dinner, no agenda, no occasion, just proximity. Food is simple, conversation meanders, nobody checks the time. The city at night feels inhabited rather than tense. Streetlights cast familiar patterns, windows glow intermittently, sounds travel gently through courtyards. The infrastructure of daily life hums without demanding attention. Public institutions continue refining processes. Feedback loops shorten, response times improve, not uniformly, but enough that expectations adjust. Citizens engage constructively because they believe engagement matters. At the Institute, external partnerships deepen, collaborations extend beyond contracts into shared practices. Common language develops, friction decreases, not because differences vanish, but because understanding improves. Natasha contributes by translating expectations, aligning timelines, clarifying assumptions. Her role is connective rather than directive, and she finds satisfaction in that. Weather shifts again, seasons feel slightly off, but preparedness mitigates. Impact systems absorb variability, communities respond collectively. This resilience feels earned. Personal routines anchor days. Natasha walks regularly, cooks, simply reads without multitasking. She notices how these choices reinforce stability, how they create a buffer against ambient noise. Financial considerations integrate seamlessly into planning. She budgets without anxiety, saves without obsession, spends intentionally. This balance reduces cognitive load. Cultural memory continues reorganizing itself. People tell stories with nuance, acknowledging contradictions, honoring experience without flattening complexity. This collective recalibration softens discourse. At work, long dormant ideas resurface, not as bold initiatives, but as incremental improvements. Natasha revisits old notes, sees relevance, reframed through new context. This continuity surprises her. Urban spaces age visibly, paint chips benches where pathways soften, but maintenance keeps decay in check. Patina becomes acceptable, even valued. Transportation networks expand modestly, connections improve not dramatically, but sufficiently to widen possibilities. Weekend trips become feasible, people explore regionally. Olga considers another adjustment at work, not expansion, not contraction, just rebalancing responsibilities. She weighs options calmly. The Institute schedules a long-term review, not to judge, but to reflect. Participants prepare thoughtfully, discussions are candid, outcomes practical. Natasha speaks when needed listens more often. Her contributions are concise, grounded. She leaves meetings energized rather than drained. Time perception shifts again. Weeks pass without incident. Months blur slightly. The absence of crisis compresses memory but expands presence. The city continues functioning as a lived system, not an experiment, not a promise, just a place where people navigate days with reasonable confidence. Life proceeds not toward a climax, but along a sustained line, and that line holds steady. Continuity stops being something people notice and becomes instead the background against which everything else is measured, like a constant low-frequency hum that fades from conscious awareness yet shapes perception all the same. At the Institute, planning horizons extend quietly. Conversations reference next year and the year after without qualifiers. Budgets, project stability, staffing models assume retention. This assumption alone reduces friction because people stop preparing for abrupt endings. Natasha reviews multi-year timelines with calm attention. She no longer searches for hidden risks in every projection. Instead, she evaluates plausibility, adjusts margins, and moves on this restraint, conserves energy. Workdays feel fuller, not longer. Tasks flow one into the next. Without sharp transitions, meetings end when objectives are met, not when time expires. This flexibility respects attention. Colleagues adopt similar rhythms. Email becomes a tool rather than a burden. Responses arrive when thoughtful, not instantly. This patience improves quality. Outside the city's daily choreography continues. Markets open and close. Commuters trace familiar arcs. Children navigate school routes with growing independence. Elderly residents claim benches at predictable hours. This repetition creates comfort. Public transport maintains its steady, imperfect rhythm. Vehicles arrive close enough to schedule that people plan loosely. Conversations continue uninterrupted by anxiety. Housing policies emphasize long-term occupancy. Renovations consider aging populations. Accessibility maintenance rather than speculative resale. This orientation stabilizes neighborhoods. Natasha notices neighbors staying longer, children growing into teenagers into adults. This continuity grounds identity. Olga adjusts her schedule again, less overtime, more delegation. She trusts her team. This trust multiplies capacity. Cultural institutions embrace archives, retrospectives, quiet celebrations of longevity rather than novelty. Exhibitions linger. Audiences return multiple times. Engagement deepens. Natasha revisits a gallery weeks apart, noticing different details. Each visit, this layered experience feels generous. Media settles into explanatory modes. Long-form analysis gains traction. Commentary slows. Readers invest time. Education systems reinforce fundamentals. Students progress steadily. Assessments feel fair. Expectations transparent. Anxiety reduces. Learning improves. Environmental stewardship integrates into infrastructure. Green roofs mature. Urban trees thicken. Microclimates shift slightly but beneficially. Shade increases. Noise softens. At work, technology updates arrive but are predictable. Backwards compatibility prioritize. Disruptions minimal. This reliability enhances focus. Leadership transitions occur without spectacle. Successors prepared in advance. Institutional knowledge preserved. Career development conversations emphasize fit. Sustainability, personal capacity rather than ambition. Metrics. Natasha appreciates this realism. Social networks consolidate. People invest in fewer relationships but deepen them. Communication becomes intentional, less performative. Olga hosts another gathering, smaller. This time conversations extend late, but gently. People leave when ready. No urgency. The city's nights remain calm, not silent. Activity hums quietly. Services function. Lights glow. Pathways remain navigable. Public feedback mechanisms mature. Surveys yield responses. Actions follow intermittently enough to maintain trust. At the Institute, research agendas align with societal needs. Funding flows steadily expectations, realistic outcomes incremental. Natasha mentors with emphasis on patience. She encourages younger colleagues to think in decades, not quarters. Weather patterns fluctuate again, infrastructure absorbs impact communities, adapt practices, evolve preparedness, becomes habit. Personal health routines stabilize people, prioritize maintenance, over intervention, preventative care, improves outcomes. Financial systems favor predictability, savings, rates normalize speculation, declines modest growth valued. Cultural narratives shift toward endurance, stories of long projects, sustained effort, quiet achievement resonate. Natasha reflects on her own trajectory, not with pride or regret, but with acceptance. She recognizes the cumulative effect of small decisions. Urban spaces continue agging gracefully where acknowledged maintenance, ongoing imperfections, accepted. Transportation links knit regions, gently mobility expands without overwhelming scale. Olga considers future adjustments, not plans, just possibilities. She feels unhurried. The Institute schedules another review, not to close chapters, but to recalibrate. This cycle continues. Time flows evenly, days stack weeks, blend months pass without punctuation, and that lack of punctuation becomes the story. Life proceeds along its steady line, uninterrupted. Stability no longer feels like an achievement, and instead becomes an assumption so ingrained that people only notice it when something deviates slightly, and even then the response is measured rather than alarmed, because the underlying expectation is that things will return to baseline. At the Institute, long conversations unfold without urgency. People reference shared history, institutional memory is assumed, not re-explained, and this shorthand speeds collaboration while reinforcing belonging. Natasha reads proposals with an editor's calm. She spots weaknesses, strengths, omissions without emotional reaction. She annotates, clearly closes files, and moves on, trusting that processes will carry the work forward. Time blocks stretch uninterrupted. Deep work becomes possible again. Phones stay silent. Notifications feel optional. This silence supports concentration. Colleagues mirror this behavior. The collective pace slows just enough to allow thought. Outside, seasonal patterns assert themselves. Shops adjust displays, cafes change menus, sidewalks host different foot traffic. The city breathes with the calendar. Public transport adapts subtly. Schedules shift minutes earlier or later. Passengers adjust intuitively. No announcements required. Housing committees discuss long-term resilience, insulation, energy efficiency, accessibility modifications. Decisions prioritize decades over quarters. Natasha participates quietly, offering data, context, perspective, not urgency. Her voice carries weight precisely because it lacks drama. Olga reports improved morale at work, absenteeism declines, retention improves. People plan vacations without guilt. Coverage systems hold. Cultural spaces host extended programs, residencies, workshops, ongoing series. Audiences return repeatedly. Familiarity deepens engagement. Media consumption habits favor continuity. Subscriptions stabilize. Outlets invest in depth. Education environments benefit from reduced churn. Teachers stay longer. Curricula refine. Students experience coherence. Environmental systems integrate further. Water management improves. Green corridors connect. Biodiversity returns incrementally, noticed mostly by specialists. Workplace technology becomes almost invisible. Tools fade into background. Reliability restores trust. Leadership models emphasize succession planning, mentorship, distributed authority. Transitions feel seamless. Career advancement unfolds gradually. Recognition arrives in increments. People adjust expectations accordingly. Social interactions reflect maturity. Boundaries respected. Invitations declined, accepted without offense. Olga spends weekends differently, now less recovery, more enjoyment. Energy balances. The city at dusk maintains its gentle pulse. commuters disperse, lights flicker on familiar routes fill. Public services operate predictably, offices respond, timelines communicated, delays explain, trust persists. At the Institute, collaborations extend internationally, time zone coordination, smooth processes, standardized. Natasha navigates these networks effortlessly, her role translator, facilitator, steady presence. Weather variability returns, infrastructure absorbs impact, community response, calm supplies, stocked, systems tested. Personal routines anchor days, exercise, meals, rest scheduled naturally. Financial planning feels boring in the best way, numbers move slowly, predictably. Cultural memory continues, layering, stories accumulate without erasing previous ones, nuance survives. Urban wear accumulates, but maintenance keeps pace, scars tell stories without signaling decline. Transportation expands incrementally, connections deepen, region integrates. Olga considers future shifts with curiosity, not urgency. She trusts timing. Institutional reviews continue, cyclical, reflective, not judgmental, adjustments follow. Days pass evenly, moments accumulate without climax, and that accumulation defines life. Everything continues, moving forward. Time stretches in a way that feels generous rather than heavy, and this generosity changes how people inhabit their days, because when urgency loosens its grip, attention redistributes itself toward maintenance, reflection, and quiet adjustment. At the Institute, annual planning meetings evolve into long-horizon conversations, documents reference 5-year arcs, 10-year considerations, not as speculative dreams, but as working assumptions, and this temporal expansion stabilizes decision-making. Natasha reviews these materials with steady focus. She tracks dependencies, notes risks, assigns probabilities, not alarms. Her annotations guide, rather than command, and colleagues trust that tone. Work rhythms continue, smoothing, mornings open gently, afternoons taper, evenings conclude without last-minute flurries. This predictability supports sustained energy. People begin leaving work on time, not as protest, but as habit. Buildings empty gradually, lights dim in sequence, cleaning crews operate efficiently. Outside streets absorb this cadence, foot traffic peaks predictably, then fades, neighborhoods quiet without tension. Public transport adapts again, frequency adjusts subtly, people intuitively know which trains to catch, no rush, no scramble. Housing cooperatives schedule long-term upgrades, insulation, elevators, accessibility improvements, budgets spread costs over years, residents approve plans calmly. Natasha attends another meeting, listens to concerns, responds with context, patience frames decisions, consensus forms. Olga reports similar shifts at her workplace, project timelines lengthen slightly, quality improves, stress markers decline. Cultural institutions deepen, programming, lectures, series, workshops, ongoing conversations, audiences commit over time, relationships form between creators and communities. Natasha follows a lecture series, returns monthly, familiarity enhances understanding. Media outlets refine editorial calendars, fewer breaking alerts, more considered pieces, readers adjust expectations. Education systems reinforce continuity, students progress through coherent curricula, teachers build on previous cohorts, learning compounds. Environmental initiatives mature, monitoring replaces campaigning, data informs maintenance, urban ecosystems stabilize. Workplace technology remains steady, upgrades scheduled, communicated well in advance, disruptions minimal. Leadership training emphasizes listening, succession pipelines fill quietly, transitions feel natural. Career planning discussions shift toward sustainability, capacity balance, personal goals align with institutional needs. Social networks continue, consolidating gatherings, smaller, deeper conversations, linger, topics broaden beyond immediate concerns. Olga hosts another evening, simple meal, shared stories unfold without agenda, laughter soft. City evenings maintain gentle activity, cafes close gradually, lights dim, street sounds soften. Public services operate reliably, response times, consistent communication, clear trust holds. At the Institute, international collaborations settle into routines, time zone overlaps, scheduled partners anticipate each other needs. Natasha coordinates, effortlessly bridging expectations, smoothing workflows. Weather events recur, systems respond, protocols activated, communities cooperate, repairs proceed efficiently. Personal health practices normalize, preventative care uptake increases, outcomes improve gradually. Financial behavior stabilizes, savings habits form, long-term planning replaces short-term reaction. Cultural narratives emphasize endurance, craftsmanship, patience. These themes resonate. Urban infrastructure ages with care, maintenance schedules extend lifespan, pattern accepted. Transportation networks integrate regionally, connectivity improves, options expand without overload. Olga considers further adjustments, not driven by pressure, curiosity guides choices. Institutional reflection cycles continue, metrics reviewed, adjustments implemented, learning persists. Days accumulate without punctuation, weeks blend, months pass, presence deepens. The absence of climax becomes the point, life proceeds steadily. Calm becomes habitual, and when something is habitual, it stops requiring explanation, which means people stop talking about stability and simply operate within it, making decisions that assume tomorrow will resemble today closely enough to plan without contingency spirals. At the Institute, the annual cycle repeats with minor variation, proposals arrive, reviews precede, funding aligns, feedback loops close and reopen without anyone marking the passage, explicitly, calendars turn quietly. Natasha senses this continuity most strongly in how little she thinks about structure anymore. Processes exist, and she trusts them enough to focus on substance. She reads slowly, absorbs context, responds with measured notes, her language precise, unhurried. Colleagues mirror this cadence, discussions open without preambles, end without summaries. Everyone understands the middle ground where work actually happens. Workspaces reflect maturity, desks stay organized, not obsessively, but functionally, shared spaces remain usable, respect is implicit. Outside, the city continues its steady choreography, deliveries arrive, shops open, commuters flow, patterns shift seasonally, but predictably, sidewalks host familiar faces, nods replace conversations, recognition replaces novelty. Public transport operates within known tolerances, delays acknowledged, accepted, adjusted around people, carry books, podcasts, patience. Housing developments focus on integration rather than expansion, renovations prioritize longevity, materials chosen for durability, aesthetics secondary, but not ignored. Natasha participates in planning sessions, offering long-view perspective, reminding groups of previous cycles. Lessons learned, this historical grounding prevents repetition. Olga notes similar dynamics at her organization, institutional memory. Valued onboarding emphasizes context, new hires absorb culture quickly. Cultural life maintains a low, steady hum, exhibitions rotate, performances repeat with variation, audiences develop loyalty, familiarity deepens appreciation. Natasha attends fewer events, but stays longer when she does, attention sustained without distraction. Media continues, favoring depth, newsletters replace alerts, long reads circulate widely, readers commit time. Education environments benefit from teacher retention, curricular coherence, students progress confidently, learning builds. Environmental stewardship shifts into monitoring, maintenance, data guides, incremental improvement, systems stabilize. Technology infrastructure remains invisible, functioning, updates predictable, downtime scheduled, communicated. Leadership culture emphasizes stewardship, transitions planned well ahead, authority distributed, resilience increases. Career paths flatten gently, fewer leaps, more ladders people plan, lives around steady progression. Social interactions continue, simplifying honesty, becomes default, declines invitations, without explanation, accepted without resentment. Olga adjusts personal routines, exercise, rest, social time, balanced energy, stable. City evenings remain calm, lights glow, conversations drift from cafes' windows, open sounds mingle gently. Public services maintain responsiveness, feedback, acknowledged actions taken within expected windows, trust reinforced. At the Institute, collaboration extends across sectors, boundaries blur, cooperation normalizes. Natasha navigates networks with ease, translating needs, aligning expectations. Weather variability tests preparedness against systems, respond drills, executed repairs, prompt community cooperation, smooth. Personal health practices integrate into daily life, checkups, scheduled habits, maintained outcomes improve slowly. Financial planning remains uneventful, numbers change modestly, predictability valued. Cultural narratives emphasize continuity, legacy, long arc stories of maintenance resonate. Urban wear continues, benches scuff walls, whether maintenance keeps decay in check, age visible, accepted. Transportation options expand modestly, cycling routes, improve schedules, align intermodal travel easier. Olga considers future possibilities, with curiosity, timing feels flexible, no pressure. Institutional reviews proceed, reflective adjustments made, documentation updated, cycle continues. Time perception remains altered, days full, without urgency, weeks pass quietly, months accumulate, presence deepens. Life continues along its steady line, without commentary. Days accumulate the way sediment does, layer by layer, quietly, without anyone standing back often enough to notice the shape that is forming. And because no single day demands attention, the weight of time distributes itself evenly, making life feel both fuller and lighter at the same time. At the Institute, this accumulation shows in subtle confidence. People reference decisions made years earlier without searching archives. Memory lives in conversation, in habit, in shared assumptions. And this continuity reduces the need for justification because precedent feels reliable rather than restrictive. Natasha moves through these layers with ease. She recognizes patterns, anticipates questions, answers them before they surface, not out of urgency, but familiarity. Her responses are calm, measured, shaped by experience rather than reaction. Workdays settle into long arcs, mornings begin without rush, midpoints sustain focus, afternoons taper gently, and evenings release without residue. She leaves work without carrying it home, not because she disengages, but because closure has become part of the process. Colleagues share this posture. Conversations at the end of the day feel complete, not truncated emails, close loops rather than open new ones. There is a collective understanding that unfinished work can wait without consequence. Outside the Institute, the city continues its unremarkable competence. Streets are repaired before they fail, signals function, schedules hold, people navigate with loose attention, trusting infrastructure to support movement rather than obstruct it. Public transport remains slightly imperfect, but predictably so. Riders build buffer intuitively, conversations continue, books stay open, no one watches the clock too closely. Housing life reflects similar rhythms. Maintenance crews appear on schedule, residents recognize them, exchange brief greetings, trust the process. Buildings age without anxiety. Natasha attends another cooperative meeting, shorter than the last, fewer agenda items, discussion efficient, consensus quick, no one lingers unnecessarily, decisions recorded, implemented. Olga mentions noticing the same thing at her workplace, less drama, fewer escalations, issues addressed at the appropriate level rather than ricocheting upward. This containment reduces noise. Cultural institutions maintain their steady output, programs repeat with variation, audiences develop familiarity, which deepens appreciation, novelty recedes, as primary value. Natasha returns to the same theater months apart, noticing different things each time. The space feels known. This familiarity enhances attention rather than dulling it. Media continues shifting toward slower formats, weekly digests, long interviews, reflective essays. People consume intentionally rather than compulsively. Education systems benefit from this. Packing teachers plan confidently, students progress. Without constant recalibration, learning feels cumulative. Environmental practices embed further infrastructure, handles water, energy, waste quietly, systems monitored, adjusted, rarely advertised, effectiveness measured over spectacle. Technology remains backgrounded, updates scheduled well in advance, disruptions minimal. People stop talking about platforms entirely, which feels like success. Leadership culture reinforces stewardship. Leaders see themselves as temporary caretakers rather than visionaries. Transitions prepared quietly, continuity prioritized. Career development discussions reflect realism, ambition tempered by capacity. People choose paths that align with life rather than override it. Social relationships continue consolidating. People invest where energy flows reciprocally, boundaries respected, expectations clear, gatherings feel restorative. Olga hosts another small evening, no theme, no schedule. People arrive, leave naturally, conversation drifts through memory, work, speculation without urgency. The city's nights retain their gentle hum, not silent, not restless activity, distributed evenly. Windows glow sporadically, footsteps echo lightly in corridors. Public services maintain responsiveness, forms processed within stated timelines, communication clear, delays explained without defensiveness, trust persists. At the Institute, cross-sector collaboration becomes routine. Partnerships span disciplines, sectors, geographies, coordination, smooth shared language develops. Natasha facilitates effortlessly. Weather patterns shift again, infrastructure absorbs variation, protocols activated, repairs timely, communities cooperate as habit. Personal health routines remain steady, preventative care normalized, small adjustments yield long-term benefit. Financial behavior continues boringly stable, budgets hold, savings grow slowly, predictability valued over excitement. Cultural narratives emphasize patience, craft, maintenance, long arc stories celebrate those who stayed rather than those who surged. Urban spaces continue agging visibly, but with care. Paint fades, benches polish, paths soften, maintenance prevents neglect, where becomes character rather than failure. Transportation networks integrate gently, cycling paths extend, schedules align, transfers smoother, mobility expands without overload. Olga considers another professional adjustment, not driven by dissatisfaction, curiosity guides, timing feels flexible. Institutional reflection cycles continue quietly, metrics reviewed, notes taken, changes implemented without ceremony. Time perception remains altered, days feel substantial without strain, weeks pass without markers, months accumulate, presence deepens. Nothing announces itself, and that becomes the defining feature. Life continues steadily without signaling its own progress. Duration begins to outpace attention, which means that time keeps moving whether or not anyone is actively tracking it. And this produces a strange calm, because when attention no longer grips each passing moment, the moments themselves lose their sharp edges and blend into a continuous lived surface. At the Institute, this manifests as an ease with long gaps between milestones. Projects no longer require constant validation, updates are spaced meaningfully. Trust fills the space between check-ins, and people learn to sit with progress that is invisible but steady. Natasha feels this most clearly when she opens files she hasn't touched in months and finds them exactly where she expects, neither outdated nor urgent, just waiting. She resumes without friction, the continuity intact. Her workday unfolds like a long breath, tasks align naturally, interruptions feel manageable. She no longer braces against them. because recovery is built into the structure of the day. Colleagues adopt similar packing conversations, begin midstream end without summary understanding. Assumed this shared context accelerates collaboration without increasing pressure. Workspaces reflect this maturity. Desks hold only what's needed. Walls display functional references, not motivation slogans. Silence becomes productive. Outside the institute, the city continues its measured pulse. Deliveries arrive on predictable schedules. Storefronts adjust signage seasonally. Foot traffic ebbs and flows without congestion. Public transport maintains its steady reliability. Riders carry routines within routines, small personal rituals that pass the time without urgency. Housing maintenance continues methodically. Inspections scheduled years ahead. Upgrades phased. Budgets predictable. Residents accept inconvenience knowing outcomes. Natasha attends another planning session. The tone calm. Data reviewed. Decisions made. Implementation assigned without dramatization. Olga reports similar rhythms in her sphere. Escalation paths clear, rarely used. Most issues resolved at origin. Containment becomes default. Cultural life sustains itself through repetition and refinement. Festivals return annually with minor adjustments. Audiences anticipate rather than chase novelty. Natasha revisits favorite spaces, galleries, theaters, parks. Familiarity enhances perception. Details emerge that were missed before. Media consumption aligns with this tempo. Long-form pieces shared, discussed over days. Attention deepens. Education systems benefit from reduced churn. Teachers remain. Curricula stabilize. Students experience continuity. Learning builds incrementally. Environmental systems operate quietly. Monitoring replaces messaging. Sensors inform maintenance. Ecosystems adjust gradually. Technology infrastructure remains backgrounded. Failures rare. Recoveries swift. Confidence restored. Leadership practices emphasize continuity. Mentoring pipelines filled. Succession unremarkable. Transitions smooth. Career trajectories normalize. Lateral moves valued as much as upward ones. People optimize for fit. Longevity. Social interactions continue. Simplifying communication. Direct expectations clear. Fewer misunderstandings. Olga balances commitments effortlessly. Weekends feel restorative rather than compensatory. City evenings maintain their gentle cadence. Lights flicker on cafes close. Gradually streets quiet without emptiness. Public services operate within known parameters. Responsiveness consistent. Feedback loops short. At the institute, interdisciplinary work flourishes. Boundaries porous. Collaboration routine. Natasha moves between groups, translating context, aligning goals. Weather variability returns. Infrastructure responds. Protocols practiced. Communities cooperate instinctively. Personal health routines integrate seamlessly. Preventative care normalized. Small habits compound. Financial behavior remains stable. Budgets predictable. Savings incremental. Growth accepted. Cultural narratives highlight endurance. Craftsmanship stories of those who sustained systems resonate. Urban wear accumulates slowly. Maintenance keeps pace. Age visible. Accepted. Transportation options expand gently. Interconnections improve. Travel feels fluid. Olga contemplates future changes without urgency. Curiosity guides decisions. Institutional reviews proceed quietly. Metrics analyzed. Adjustments implemented. Cycles repeat. Time perception continues. Shifting. Days feel dense. Weeks glide. Months stack without punctuation. Life moves forward without marking its movement. Living stretches beyond awareness now, and that means most days pass without being named or evaluated. They simply occur and leave behind a faint residue of having been inhabited, which is enough, because not every moment needs to be processed to be meaningful. At the Institute, this quiet extension of time changes how people speak about their work. Sentences lengthen. Pauses appear. Nobody rushes to conclusions, because conclusions are rarely final anymore. They are checkpoints along a longer path that everyone understands continues beyond the meeting room. Natasha experiences this most clearly when younger colleagues ask how long something will take, and she answers not with dates, but with conditions explaining what needs to settle before progress becomes visible, and they accept this answer because it matches their lived experience. Projects exist in layers, now some active, some dormant, some cycling slowly forward. The absence of urgency allows these layers to coexist without friction, and work becomes less about pushing and more about maintaining alignment. Her days flow in long, uninterrupted sequences. She arrives, prepares, works, pauses, resumes, finishes, leaves, without feeling rushed or depleted. The rhythm holds. Colleagues operate similarly. Conversations drift between topics without losing coherence. Shared context does the work of structure. Outside the institute, the city continues its long, slow competence. Traffic patterns hold sidewalks, age gracefully. Storefronts rotate tenants without destabilizing streets. Life persists at a humane scale. Public transport carries people reliably enough that planning becomes approximate rather than exact. Commuters adjust intuitively. Nobody narrates delays because they are already accounted for. Housing remains stable. Buildings age predictably. Repairs scheduled. Systems maintained. Residents trust that issues will be addressed eventually, and that trust removes tension. Natasha attends another meeting, notices how little emotion is invested in outcomes. Decisions matter, but they no longer threaten identity. This separation allows clearer thinking. Olga reports similar emotional decoupling at work. Problems are problems, not reflections of personal worth. This distinction reduces burnout. Cultural institutions maintain continuity. Exhibitions linger. Programs repeat. Audiences form habits. Loyalty deepens. Appreciation grows. Natasha returns to familiar spaces, noticing new details each time. This layered perception feels rewarding. Media consumption continues. Slowing. Long essays replace rapid commentary. People read across days return to pieces. Reflect. Education systems mature. Students move through curricula without constant restructuring. Learning feels cumulative. Environmental infrastructure hums quietly. Water flows, energy grids stabilize. Waste systems operate unseen. Success measured by absence of disruption. Technology remains boring, which is ideal. Devices function. Updates predictable. Attention free for other things. Leadership focuses on stewardship, caretaking, rather than vision statements. Transitions planned quietly. Career development aligns with life cycles. People adjust workloads over decades, not years. Sabbaticals normalized, packing respected. Social circles condense into trusted constellations. Interactions feel restorative. Communication honest. Expectations clear. Olga hosts another low-key gathering. Conversation wanders without agenda. Time stretches. The city at night feels held. Streetlights steady. Windows glow. Sounds travel softly. Public services maintain predictable response times. Forms processed. Communication clear. Trust stable. At the Institute, collaboration extends beyond projects into shared understanding across fields. Language aligns. Barriers lower. Natasha moves fluidly. Weather events recur. Systems respond. Communities adapt without panic. Preparedness habitual. Personal health routines remain steady. Small daily practices compound into resilience. Financial life remains unremarkable. Budgets hold. Savings grow slowly. Predictability valued. Cultural narratives emphasize staying power. Maintenance. Endurance stories celebrate those who kept things running. Urban spaces continue agging visibly. Maintenance prevents decline. Where tells stories without alarm. Transportation networks integrate smoothly. Routes align. Transfers simple. Mobility expands gently. Olga considers future adjustments without urgency. Curiosity leads. Timing flexible. Institutional reviews cycle again. Metrics examined. Adjustments made. Documentation updated memory preserved. Time perception continues, stretching days feel, complete weeks blur, months pass, without punctuation. Life continues in this extended mode, without climax, without resolution, just ongoing presence. Time continues its quiet widening, and within that widening people stop asking where things are going and instead learn how to stay with where they are without restlessness. This is not resignation, it is orientation, a steady placement within ongoing movement. Natasha notices that even memory behaves differently now. Recollections no longer demand emotional resolution. They surface, briefly add context, then fade back into storage. Without disturbance, the mind organizes itself with minimal instruction. At work, the archive expands, but not chaotically. Records are kept with care, annotations, added slowly. Future readers anticipated, not imagined as judges, but as participants inheriting continuity. New employees arrive and absorb the tone quickly. Questions shift from what is expected to how things are usually handled, which signals assimilation. Meetings continue, but feel lighter. Decisions documented without anxiety. Dissent recorded without consequence. Process trusted. The building itself holds accumulated knowledge. Corridors feel familiar, even to first-time visitors. Signage intuitive, where patterns guide movement. Outside, seasons rotate with recognizable cadence. Clothing changes, store windows, adjust markets, adapt availability quietly. Food culture emphasizes reliability. Recipes repeat small variations, enjoyed without commentary. Cooking becomes maintenance, not performance. Natasha cooks without distraction. Movements, memorized meals nourish without ceremony. Friends check in not for updates, but for presence. Calls unstructured. Silence acceptable. Conversation drifts, resumes. Pauses, ends without conclusion. Olga reflects that friendships now feel less like projects and more like landscapes, always their different light each visit. Media cycles, slow headlines linger. Analysis replaces reaction, understanding valued over novelty. Education emphasizes comprehension over throughput. Students encouraged to dwell. Teachers rewarded for patience. Civic participation feels habitual. Voting, attendance, discussion, routine. Engagement, not performative. Public discourse maintains low-volume. Disagreements, framed within shared baseline. Mutual recognition persists. Infrastructure upgrades occur invisibly. Streets reopen quickly. Notices minimal disruption. Life flows. Technology integrates quietly. Interfaces stable. Learning curves, shallow. Devices support, not command attention. Workplaces accommodate life variations. Caregiving, illness, aging without stigma. Policies flex quietly. Natasha adjusts schedule temporarily. No explanation required. Continuity assumed. Cultural memory preserved through rituals. Understated commemorations. Reflection rather than spectacle. Museums maintain permanent exhibits. Slowly rotating details. Deeper engagement. Repeat visits rewarding. Urban wildlife coexists. Pigeons, squirrels, birds. Integrated presence accepted. Environmental rhythms observed. Flood controls maintained. Heat mitigation planned. Resilience practiced. Personal aspirations reframe from achievement to alignment. Satisfaction found in fit rather than outcome. Financial planning steady. Conservative growth preferred over speculation. Security valued. The notion of legacy softens. Contributions diffuse. Influence spread across systems rather than monuments. At gatherings, conversation often returns to shared experiences, not to evaluate, but to acknowledge continuity. Music listened repeatedly. Familiarity deepens. Enjoyment, novelty secondary. Reading habits favor long-form works. Reread annually. Interpretation evolves. Natasha keeps a notebook not to capture ideas, but to trace ongoing threads. Entries sparse, yet meaningful. Sleep patterns regular. Rest restorative, without drama. Waking gradual. Morning routines, unhurried days, begin without urgency. Coffee prepared slowly. Windows opened. Light welcomed. Commutes become contemplative movement space for thought, not stress. Colleagues greet each other with genuine warmth. Familiarity deepens trust, reduces friction. Institutional humor dry, understated inside references, shared gently bonding. Mistakes handled calmly. Corrections implemented without blame. Learning integrated. The city holds memory layers. Visible architecture. Signage. Stories told through presence. Children grow observing this steadiness. Internalize patience. Expectations calibrated. Education encourages curiosity without pressure. Exploration valued. Healthcare emphasizes prevention. Continuity of care. Relationships maintained. Natasha attends checkups. Conversations relaxed. Providers. Familiar context known. Agging perceived as accumulation rather than decline. Skills deepen. Physical adjustments normalized. Retirement discussed as transition, not disappearance. Engagement continues differently. Public spaces accommodate all ages. Seating abundant. Accessibility considered. Cultural production, steady artists, supported. Long-term experimentation allowed. Audience relationships, stable. Creators, trusted to evolve slowly. Even conflict resolution feels. Procedural frameworks exist. Trust in fairness maintained. International relations, calm diplomacy. Routine escalation avoided. Global awareness present, but not overwhelming. Information filtered. Contextualized. People invest locally. Understanding ripple effects. Global, but anchored. Natasha reflects occasionally on how this mode emerged gradually, unnoticed, until it was simply how things were. There was no announcement, no reform moment, just accumulation of practices that favored steadiness. She recognizes that meaning now derives from participation rather than anticipation. Each day complete, without needing culmination. Time no longer segmented by milestones, instead experienced as continuum. Even loss, when it occurs, integrates into fabric. Acknowledged, mourned, supported without rupture. Community networks respond instinctively. Meals, visits, coverage systems hold. Grief shared without spectacle. Remembrance ongoing. Joy similarly, understated. Satisfaction found in small consistencies. Weather forecasts consulted casually. Plans adapt easily. Flexibility habitual. Transportation systems adjust schedules. Communicated clearly. Trust maintained. Civic infrastructure funding stable. Maintenance prioritized. Public art maintained, refreshed, not replaced. Continuity valued. Natasha walks familiar routes, noticing incremental changes. Tree growth paint, where seasonal markers. These observations ground her. Anchor awareness to present without demand. Evenings unfold predictably. Activities chosen lightly. Reading, conversation, rest. The sense of being held by systems reduces. Existential noise allows focus on lived experience. Time passes, not quickly, not slowly, simply sufficiently. And within this sufficiency, life continues without needing an ending. Stability settles into the background so completely that it becomes invisible, like a constant low-frequency hum that only becomes noticeable when briefly interrupted, and then immediately missed, because its absence feels louder than its presence ever did. And within this background, life continues layering itself gently without pressure. Natasha moves through weeks that feel evenly weighted. Each day carrying roughly the same density of obligation, interest, and rest. No spikes, no troughs, just a steady line that supports attention without demanding it. At the Institute, planning horizons extend further without becoming abstract. 5-year projections discussed casually, not as aspirations, but as maintenance cycles. What will need replacing, what knowledge must be transferred, what skills cultivated slowly. Mentorship becomes informal. Senior staff absorb newcomers through proximity rather than instruction. Understanding transmitted through observation. Tone adopted. Habits mirrored. Errors still occur, but their emotional charge dissipates quickly. The system expects correction and has room for it. Documentation absorbs lessons process, improves quietly. Outside work the city expresses similar tolerance construction zones appear and disappear detours, accepted signage sufficient frustration minimal. Public communication prioritizes clarity announcements, concise expectations realistic, no inflated promises. Natasha notices how language itself has softened extremes, rare metaphors, grounded comparisons practical. News coverage emphasizes continuity rather than rupture developments framed as adjustments rather than crises context, provided generously. People respond with measured interest discussion, thoughtful volume low. Cultural events unfold predictably seasons, bring familiar festivals, updated slightly each year participation, habitual enjoyment steady. Food availability remains consistent supply chains, reliable menus, stable innovation incremental. Markets feel calm, shoppers unhurried lines, short exchanges polite. Housing maintenance, routines, transparent schedules, posted residents informed trust, reinforced. Transportation upgrades rolled out gradually testing periods, respected feedback incorporated. Technology adoption, similarly paced features, introduced quietly training, available support responsive frustration rare. Personal devices fade into tools background presence, not identity markers. Social rituals continue birthdays, acknowledged modestly, gatherings, intimate gifts practical. Friendships persist through proximity shared history, rather than constant communication silence, acceptable bonds intact. Natasha and Olga sometimes meet without plans walking routes, they know conversation, optional shared presence sufficient. These moments illustrate how companionship matures from exchange to cohabitation of time. Civic spaces reflect this maturity benches, placed for lingering parks, maintained for everyday use, not spectacle. Children play without constant supervision environments, designed for safety trust, granted. Education spaces mirror this calm classrooms, orderly teachers, respected curriculum, paced learning cumulative. Assessment focuses on understanding, not ranking students' progress visibly, without competition dominating. Healthcare systems emphasize relationships continuity of providers trust familiarity adherence improves. Preventative measures, routine checkups normalized health, framed as ongoing stewardship. Natasha appreciates this framing feeling, supported rather than monitored. Agging infrastructure addressed proactively pipes, replaced before failure roads resurfaced, before decay visibility minimal. The concept of emergency narrows truly rare events treated with seriousness response, rehearsed effectiveness high. Cultural memory preserved through storytelling rather than monuments elders share experiences, informally younger generations listen without urgency. Libraries function as anchors, quiet, busy, reliable repositories of shared understanding. Natasha spends time there reading not for information, but for resonance texts, chosen slowly, reread deeply. The rhythm of days accommodates introspection without isolation, solitude integrated social life balanced. Financial systems favor predictability interest, rates stable policies, clear planning straightforward. People save not from fear, but from habit security, assumed built gradually. Work-life balance, normalized overtime exceptional, not expected vacations, respected coverage, arranged seamlessly. Olga describes feeling less torn between roles, identities, integrated compartments dissolve. This integration reduces cognitive load, frees attention for nuance. Public art reflects subtle themes, maintenance, continuity, everyday beauty murals, refreshed, carefully preserving essence. Environmental stewardship, embedded daily recycling, composting, energy conservation, habitual, not moralized. Weather variability, addressed through infrastructure design, shading, drainage, insulation, communities, adapt without panic. Natasha notices plants thriving in public spaces, irrigation systems, adjusted seasonal planning evident. Urban planning favors walkability, mixed-use neighborhoods encourage presence, reduce transit dependency. Local economies flourish modestly, small businesses supported, long-term relationships valued. Civic participation steady, committees staffed, volunteers, consistent governance, transparent. Decision-making processes documented, accessible, trust maintained. The absence of spectacle allows focus on substance, policy adjustments, measured outcomes, tracked, patience exercised. International engagement, steady diplomacy, ongoing cooperation, prioritized conflict, avoided through routine dialogue. Global awareness, contextualized empathy, extended without overwhelm. Individuals cultivate hobbies for pleasure, not monetization, crafts, practiced music, played gardening, tended. These activities provide texture without demanding productivity. Natasha tends plants on her windowsill, growth, incremental satisfaction, quiet. Evenings often conclude with reading, conversation, or simple rest, transitions, gentle. Sleep arrives as continuation, not escape, the day folds rather than collapses. Mornings begin without resistance, light welcomed, routines flow. This cycle repeats not monotonously, but reliably, variation within bounds. Life feels inhabitable, sustainable, attention distributed evenly. The concept of peak moments fades, replaced by sustained adequacy, which proves richer. People measure well-being by absence of strain rather than presence of excitement. Language reflects this satisfaction. Phrases like good enough carry positive weight. Community narratives celebrate caretakers, maintainers, those who keep systems running. Recognition, subtle appreciation, consistent. Natasha reflects that this mode requires trust, built over time, easily disrupted, but resilient once established. She notices new generations adopting it, naturally, expectations calibrated from early experience. This continuity suggests durability, not stagnation, adaptive capacity embedded. Time continues unfolding without hurry, without destination, and within that unfolding, meaning persists not as end point, but as ongoing alignment. Continuity never announces itself, it just keeps showing up day after day, quietly doing its work, until one day people realize they have stopped bracing for change, and instead learned how to inhabit duration without anxiety, and that realization itself does not arrive with clarity, but with a soft sense of things holding. Natasha experiences this while sorting papers at her desk, noticing how many projects have no defined end date, only maintenance notes, updates, marginalia, signs of life, continuing rather than progressing toward resolution, and she finds this reassuring rather than unsettling. The Institute calendar reflects this attitude, deadlines spaced generously, milestones framed as check-ins rather than verdicts, work evaluated over time, not moments. Conversations with colleagues rarely begin with urgency. Instead, they start midstream, assuming shared context. No need to recap everything, trust fills gaps. New hires learn quickly that asking how things are done matters more than asking why things are done a certain way, because history answers the second question implicitly. Outside the building, the street maintains its familiar pattern. The same vendor opens his stall at roughly the same time each morning. Customers arrive without coordinating, knowing presence will be met. Traffic ebbs and flows within known limits. Drivers adjust instinctively, courtesy habitual, not heroic. Public signage remains consistent, fonts, colors, symbols unchanged, reducing cognitive friction, navigation effortless. Natasha walks past construction zones, noticing how even disruption follows routine. Fences appear, schedules posted, progress visible, removal timely, trust reinforced. Cafes maintain menus with minor seasonal adjustments. Patrons return for reliability, not surprise. Conversations familiar, baristas greet without scripted friendliness. Food culture emphasizes nourishment over novelty. Meals anchor days, provide structure. At home, Natasha cooks dishes she has prepared for years. Muscle memory guides process attention, free to wander. She listens to the radio voices, steady programming, predictable music selections, familiar tones calming. Friends call occasionally without agenda silence, acceptable calls end without apology connection affirmed. Olga remarks that time spent together now feels less like catching up and more like continuing something paused briefly. This sense extends to family gatherings, where conversations resume themes, revisited layers, added without exhaustion. Generational exchanges occur organically. Elders share stories. When prompted, not lecturing, youth listen, selectively absorb context. Cultural references persist. Shared media touchstones reappear, annually reinforcing collective memory. Television programs repeat cycles, reruns welcomed. Familiarity deepens enjoyment. Libraries remain central. Quiet, busy spaces. People linger without pressure. Natasha reads slowly, sometimes the same page multiple times, savoring cadence. Comprehension secondary to immersion. Education systems reflect this. Packing curricula designed for mastery. Repetition allowed students progress without constant assessment. Anxiety reduced. Teachers valued for stability. Mentorship, continuity respected. Healthcare interactions similarly. Relational providers know patients, history, context. Trust builds adherence, improves outcomes. Preventative care normalized. Check-ins routine, not reactive. Public health messaging consistent, understated, avoids alarm fatigue. Credibility preserved. Aging population, integrated community structures, adjust seating, lighting, accessibility without segregation. Retirement viewed as role transition. Opportunities for contribution, persist. Mentorship, volunteering, engagement flexible. Urban design accommodates slower movement, benches, ramps, crossings, extended time allowances. Children observe elders integrated into daily life, understanding continuity across ages. Civic institutions operate with predictable cadence. Meetings, scheduled outcomes, incremental transparency maintained. Public budgets emphasize maintenance. Funding prioritized over grand projects. Infrastructure kept functional. Environmental management, proactive. Wetlands restored. Floodplains respected. Adaptation ongoing. Weather variability addressed through preparedness rather than emergency response. Community drills habitual, not fearful. Natasha notices how plants in public spaces thrive. Species selected for resilience. Care routines established. Local economies emphasize long-term relationships. Businesses serve neighborhoods. Loyalty mutual. Small shops survive through consistent patronage, not constant expansion. Cultural production values endurance. Artists supported residencies. Long arcs allowed experimentation without immediate payoff. Audiences follow careers over decades. Appreciation deepens. Music listened to repeatedly. Familiarity enriches perception. Subtle variations noticed. Reading habits include rereading classics. Understanding evolves. Natasha keeps a few books by her bedside, return to annually. Markers of time passing. Sleep patterns remain. Steady nights, quiet rest restorative. Morning light enters predictably. Routines begin gently. Commutes offer time for reflection. Movement rhythmic. Colleagues greet each other warmly. Familiarity reduces. Formality. Collaboration smooth. Humor understated. Shared references lighten days without disruption. Mistakes addressed calmly. Learning integrated. Systems adjust. The city carries layers of history. Visible architecture, signage, memory embedded. Public art maintained, refreshed carefully. Continuity honored. Civic pride understated. Confidence rooted in reliability. International awareness present, but contextualized. News consumed thoughtfully. Perspective maintained. Global events discussed calmly. Empathy expressed. Boundaries acknowledged. Personal aspirations framed around balance contribution alignment rather than achievement. Financial planning, conservative steady growth, valued security prioritized. The concept of success redefined as sustainability. Natasha reflects occasionally on how earlier life felt more segmented, more urgent. This continuity feels like arrival, but without destination. Time experienced as spacious attention distributed evenly. Even loss integrates community, supports rituals, gentle remembrance ongoing. Joy similarly, modest contentment, found in small consistencies. Weather forecasts consulted casually plans, adjust flexibility normalized. Transportation systems adapt communicate clearly trust maintained. Civic maintenance, crews visible appreciated work recognized. Public spaces cleaned regularly, order maintained, without enforcement. The sense of being held by systems persists, allowing individuals to focus on lived experience. Time passes neither fast nor slow, simply continuously. And within this continuity life unfolds without needing culmination. Duration becomes a habitat rather than a measure, and within it, people arrange their lives the way one arranges furniture, not to impress anyone, but to make movement easy and familiar, and this sense of inhabiting time, rather than passing through it, continues to shape everything Natasha notices around her. At the Institute, planning documents are written in a tone that assumes continuity. Sentences begin with when rather than if, and this linguistic shift quietly removes anxiety about collapse, replacement, succession. Everything is expected to persist long enough to require care. Colleagues talk about future colleagues they have not met yet, as if they are already part of the conversation spaces, prepared knowledge labeled clearly, not hoarded. Training materials emphasize why patience matters, examples drawn from decades-long projects, failures acknowledged, without embarrassment, lessons preserved. The building itself reflects this philosophy. Maintenance, logs, visible repairs, dated histories, respected, nothing rushed, nothing deferred indefinitely. Natasha notices how even lighting has been adjusted over time, bulbs replaced with warmer tones, corridors softened to reduce fatigue, small changes accumulating into comfort. Outside, the weather behaves as it does, seasons rotate, but infrastructure absorbs extremes, drainage works, heating reliable, people dress accordingly, no drama. Public transportation maintains steady intervals, schedules adjusted minimally, riders adapt, trust timetables. Street sounds remain consistent, familiar rhythms anchor orientation, vendors, voices, engines, footsteps, a living metronome. Neighborhoods retain character, subtle evolution, new residents assimilate without erasing established patterns. Civic guidelines emphasize integration, respect continuity over novelty, development plans, consult residents, extensively, timelines, long feedback loops honored. Local councils meet regularly, minutes published, actions, incremental accountability steady. Natasha attends one such meeting, observes calm discussion, disagreements expressed without escalation, consensus emerges through repetition, not persuasion. This procedural patience extends to conflict resolution, mediation, preferred outcomes, gradual relationships preserved. Cultural institutions follow similar rhythms, exhibitions planned years ahead, themes revisited with new perspectives, depth prioritized. Museums maintain core collections, rotating interpretations rather than replacing narratives, continuity respected. Libraries expand quietly, acquisitions, steady cataloging, meticulous spaces remain sanctuaries of unhurried thought. Natasha spends afternoons there, sometimes not reading, just being present, absorbing collective quiet. Education systems reinforce this presence, students encouraged to linger with subjects, understanding valued more than coverage. Teachers supported to develop over careers, mentorship rewarded, institutional memory preserved. Healthcare systems reflect similar continuity, patient records detailed, providers' stable trust deepens care, improves. Preventative approaches dominate screenings, regular advice, consistent compliance high. Community health programs, embedded routines, walking groups, nutrition workshops ongoing. Aging populations, supported through integrated services homes, adapted mobility, preserved independence valued. Public spaces, designed with universal access benches, abundant restrooms, clean signage clear. Children grow, observing elders, integrated daily life, absorbing respect, continuity, interdependence. Family structures, adapt roles, flexible caregiving, shared networks, resilient. Economic systems, emphasize steadiness, employment stable, retraining, available transitions, supported. Natasha notices job postings focus on fit long-term growth rather than rapid advancement, expectations, realistic. Work evaluations occur periodically, feedback, constructive goals, modest alignment, emphasized. Financial institutions favor transparency, products, simple savings, encouraged speculation, discouraged stability, rewarded. Households budget calmly, expenses, predictable planning, straightforward, stress minimal. Cultural narratives celebrate maintainers, technicians, caregivers, teachers, librarians, those who keep systems functioning. Recognition programs highlight years of service, quiet contributions, consistency honored. Media storytelling mirrors this focus, profiles of ordinary continuity, long careers, slow transformations. News coverage contextualizes events, historically avoiding sensationalism, audiences, trust, reporting. Public discourse remains measured disagreement, framed within shared values, volume low. Technology evolves quietly, updates rolled out gradually, training, offered, adoption smooth. Interfaces, stable changes, documented users, prepared, frustration rare. Digital spaces, moderated gently, norms, enforced consistently, communities feel safe. Online discussions, mirror offline tone, thoughtful, paced, respectful. Environmental stewardship, embedded daily practices, energy conservation, routine waste reduction, normalized. Urban green spaces, maintained carefully, biodiversity, encouraged citizens participate. Natasha joins occasional planting days, routine contributions satisfying. Weather resilience plans, integrated infrastructure, adapted flood defenses, heat mitigation, shading reflective surfaces. Emergency preparedness, drilled routinely without fear, muscle memory, established. Local economies thrive on relationships, small businesses, supported loyal customers, stability mutual. Markets, predictable supply chains, resilient diversity, built in. Cultural production, values longevity, artists, supported residencies, allowed to develop over time. Audiences follow creators, across decades, appreciation deepens, context shared. Music consumption favors albums, repeated listening, nuances noticed. Reading habits include slow engagement, marginal notes, reflection time, abundant. Natasha keeps journals sporadically, not daily, just markers of ongoing threads. Personal growth reframed as accumulation, not transformation, skills, layered habits refined. Evenings unfold, gently, activities, chosen lightly, presence prioritized. Morning routines begin without resistance, light welcomed, movement slow. Commutes offer reflective space, rhythms familiar, transitions smooth. Colleagues greet each other warmly, names known, histories shared, collaboration fluid. Humor understated, inside references, shared bonds strengthened. Mistakes handled calmly, systems adjust, blame avoided, learning integrated. Urban landscapes display layers, signage faded, architecture preserved, patina respected. Public art maintained, refreshed, subtly, continuity honored. Civic pride rooted in reliability, confidence quiet. International relations conducted steadily, diplomacy, routine, cooperation normalized. Global awareness present, but balanced empathy-informed boundaries respected. Personal aspirations align with community needs, contribution valued fulfillment, found in participation. Financial planning, steady conservative growth security, prioritized. Success measured by sustainability, resilience, satisfaction. Natasha reflects occasionally how this mode emerged gradually unnoticed until it became normal. Time now feels wide, accommodating attention evenly. Loss, when it occurs, integrates community support rituals, gentle remembrance ongoing. Joy, similarly, understated contentment, found in small consistencies. Weather forecasts, consulted casually, plans, adjust flexibility, habitual. Transportation systems, communicate clearly, trust maintained. Maintenance crews, visible, appreciated, essential labor, respected. Public spaces cleaned regularly, order maintained, without coercion. The sense of being held by systems persists, allowing focus on lived experience. Time continues, not racing, not stalling, simply unfolding. And within this unfolding, life remains inhabitable without needing an ending. Living inside the ongoing becomes second nature, and once that happens, people stop narrating their lives as stories with arcs, and instead experience them as environments that can be adjusted, maintained, and inhabited without pressure to explain or justify. And this quiet shift continues shaping everything around Natasha. She notices it one morning while organizing her desk, not because something dramatic occurs, but because nothing does. The papers align, tools sit where they belong, the space functions, and that functionality itself feels like an achievement earned over time. At the Institute, long-term projects persist across personnel changes, documentation careful, onboarding gentle, continuity prioritized. Nobody speaks of legacy in grand terms, but everyone acts as if what they do will be used by someone else eventually, and that assumption governs behavior. Meetings begin without preambles, participants arrive already oriented, discussion flows, decisions, recorded tasks, distributed follow-up, scheduled, without urgency. The absence of rush allows nuance, people listen fully, responses measured, silence respected. Colleagues take leave without guilt, coverage seamless, systems designed to accommodate absence without strain. When someone returns, they reintegrate smoothly, context preserved, no catching up, panic. Outside the building, the city exhibits similar resilience. A bus reroutes temporarily, signage clear, riders adapt without complaint, trust that service will normalize soon. Streets feel worn but cared for, surfaces maintained, markings visible, lighting consistent. The city shows its age honestly without neglect. Natasha walks familiar routes, noticing small changes. A new tree planted, a bench repaired, a mural refreshed. These incremental updates signal attention. Local businesses operate steadily, hours, predictable, relationships, personal transactions warm. Cafes retain regulars, orders, remembered, conversation optional. Food supplies stable, seasonal shifts, anticipated cooking adapts smoothly. At home, Natasha prepares meals without recipes, ingredients familiar, substitutions, intuitive process, relaxed. She eats slowly, often reading, listening to background radio voices, familiar cadence, comforting. Friends visit occasionally, without formal invitations, drop ins, accepted time shared easily. Olga arrives one evening. They sit quietly for a while, conversation starting when it wants to, no pressure to perform. This ease extends to family interactions, expectations, clear boundaries, respected support, mutual. Generational roles, flexible caregiving shared, responsibilities distributed. Community networks activate quietly when needed, meals delivered, errands covered, no announcements. Cultural events continue, calendar steady, festivals recur each year, updated slightly, tradition maintained. Attendance, habitual, enjoyment, comfortable, novelty secondary. Public spaces host these events, infrastructure supports crowd flow, safety unobtrusive. Education institutions mirror this steadiness. Semesters, paced curriculum deepened repetition, allowed mastery prioritized. Students progress without constant testing anxiety, reduced curiosity sustained. Teachers supported long careers mentorship, valued institutional knowledge retained. Healthcare interactions remain relational continuity of providers fosters trust adherence improves. Preventative care routine screenings normalized health, framed as stewardship. Mental health support integrated stigma, reduced conversations open. Agging experienced as transition accumulation, wisdom valued adaptations accepted. Public infrastructure adjusts accessibility universal design standard. Transportation accommodates slower movement, seating abundant announcements clear. Children grow observing this integration, understanding continuity across ages. Civic engagement routine, committees staffed volunteers, consistent governance transparent. Local decision, making incremental policies, adjusted based on feedback cycles respected. Media coverage contextual balanced sensationalism, avoided audiences trust information. Public discourse measured disagreement civil shared baseline values. Technology remains background tool, updates predictable training, provided adoption smooth. Digital communication mirrors offline tone thoughtful paced respectful. Environmental practices embedded daily energy, use conscious waste reduce systems, support behavior. Urban green spaces maintained biodiversity, encouraged citizens participate. Natasha joins maintenance days, occasionally finds satisfaction in routine contribution. Weather resilience infrastructure adapts flood controls heat mitigation, shading effective. Emergency preparedness drills routine calm responses practiced. Economic systems emphasize stability employment, secure retraining available transitions supported. Financial planning, conservative savings, steady growth security prioritized. Cultural narratives celebrate maintenance, caretaking reliability over disruption. Recognition, subtle appreciation, consistent service honored. Art production values longevity artists supported residencies, allows slow development. Audiences follow creators over decades shared context, deepens appreciation. Music listened, repeatedly familiarity, reveals layers. Reading habits slow rereading, valued comprehension deepens. Natasha keeps a few journals, entries sporadic markers of continuity. Personal growth seen as layering habits refinement alignment. Evenings unfold gently reading conversation, rest transitions smooth. Mornings begin gradually light, welcomed routines stable. Commutes contemplative movement, rhythmic familiar. Workplace greetings, warm names known histories shared. Humor understated inside references, bond colleagues. Mistakes addressed calmly learning integrated systems adjust. Urban landscape displays layers history visible patina respected. Public art maintained, refreshed, subtly continuity honored. Civic pride rooted in reliability, quiet confidence. International relations, steady diplomacy, routine cooperation normalized. Global awareness, present contextualized empathy balanced. Personal aspirations align with community needs fulfillment, found in contribution. Success measured by sustainability balance satisfaction. Natasha reflects occasionally on how earlier life felt segmented urgent, this ongoing feels spacious. Time now experienced as habitat attention, distributed evenly. Loss when it occurs, integrates support rituals, gentle remembrance ongoing. Joy similarly, modest contentment, found in small consistencies. Weather forecasts, consulted casually plans, adapt flexibility habitual. Transportation systems, communicate clearly trust maintained. Maintenance crews, visible appreciated essential labor, respected. Public spaces clean orderly without enforcement. The sense of being held by systems persists, allowing focus on living. Time continues unfolding without demand. Time that does not ask anything of you changes the posture of living, and within that posture, people stand differently. Shoulders lower, breath steadies, attention spreads evenly. And Natasha feels this most clearly not in moments of rest, but in moments of effort, where effort no longer feels like strain. At the Institute, workdays continue to unfold without spikes. Deadlines exist, but feel like markers on a path rather than walls to be hit. Everyone knows that if something takes longer, the system will stretch to accommodate because it always has. Colleagues speak in complete thoughts, unhurried sentences, pauses, allowed ideas land gently rather than being pushed across the table. Younger staff members no longer ask how fast they should be moving. They ask how something usually feels when it is going well, which is a very different question, and one that carries an assumption of duration. Natasha answers by describing rhythms rather than outcomes, how work tends to ebb, how attention shifts, how periods of clarity alternate with maintenance phases, and this explanation seems to satisfy them more than any checklist could. The Institute itself seems to breathe ventilation cycles, adjusted lighting shifts, subtly throughout the day, temperature, stable comfort, prioritized over efficiency metrics. Hallways carry quiet foot traffic, doors open close softly, sound dampened intentionally over years through small adjustments that accumulated into Outside, the city maintains its own breathing pattern, traffic density, predictable rush hours, softened by flexible schedules. People move without urgency because most places will still be there when they arrive. Shops open close on reliable schedules, windows unchanged for years, signage familiar, fonts reassuring. Natasha passes the same newsstand, vendor nods, exchanged no words, necessary recognition, enough. Public announcements, concise, factual, no emotional framing. People trust the information. Construction projects proceed methodically, phases, visible progress, steady, no sudden halts, no frantic accelerations. Detours accepted because everyone knows they are temporary, even if temporary lasts a while. Cafes operate with unspoken rules, seating shared, politely lingering, encouraged turnover, slow baristas move with practiced ease. Food culture continues, emphasizing nourishment, repetition, comfort, flavors, seasonal predictability. At home, Natasha cooks while thinking about nothing in particular, movements, automatic knife, taps, board, water boils, steam, rises. The process anchors her without demanding focus. She eats at the table, sometimes with music, sometimes with silence. Both feel complete. Friends communicate sporadically without guilt, messages, short responses, delayed accepted connection persists. Olga sometimes sends a single line, not asking for anything, just nodding presence, which feels sufficient. Family relationships settle into patterns, expectations, clear boundaries, respected support, mutual. Generational exchanges occur without instruction. Children absorb calm as default. Community networks function quietly when someone needs help. Meals appear, errands handled, no announcements required. Cultural calendars remain stable, events recur year after year. People attend because they always have and because it feels right. Public spaces host these gatherings, infrastructure, unobtrusive crowd flow, smooth, safety integrated. Education systems reflect this calm, packing semesters, structured for depth, repetition, allowed understanding, prioritized. Students progress steadily without constant evaluation, anxiety, reduced curiosity, sustained. Teachers remain in positions long-term, developing mastery, mentorship, valued, continuity, preserved. Healthcare interactions remain relational, providers, no patients, context, trust deepens, care improves. Preventative health routines, normalized checkups, routine, advice, consistent, compliance high. Mental health conversations integrated openly, without urgency, resources available continuously. Agging perceived as accumulation adaptation rather than decline spaces adjust accordingly. Public infrastructure, universally accessible benches, ramps, lighting, signage integrated. Transportation systems accommodate varied paces, seating ample announcements clear. Children observe elders integrated daily life, absorbing continuity respect. Civic engagement routine, committees staffed by familiar faces governance, transparent incremental. Local decisions evolve slowly feedback loops, respected policy, adjustments measured. Media coverage, contextualized balanced, avoid sensationalism audiences trust, reporting. Public discourse, measured disagreements, civil shared baseline values maintained. Technology remains background tool, updates predictable training, provided adoption smooth. Digital communication, mirrors, offline tone, thoughtful paced, respectful. Environmental stewardship, embedded daily behaviors systems, support conservation. Urban green spaces, maintained biodiversity, encouraged community participation. Natasha joins occasional maintenance days, finds satisfaction in routine contribution. Weather resilience built into infrastructure flood, controls heat mitigation, shading effective. Emergency preparedness practiced, routinely responses calm rehearsed. Economic systems emphasize stability employment, secure retraining available transitions supported. Financial planning, conservative savings, steady growth security prioritized. Cultural narratives celebrate maintainers, caretakers reliability over disruption. Recognition, subtle appreciation, consistent service, honored quietly. Art production values longevity artists, supported residencies, allows slow development. Audiences follow creators across decades shared context, deepens appreciation. Music listened, repeatedly familiarity, reveals layers new meaning over time. Reading habits slow rereading, valued comprehension deepens. Natasha keeps journals intermittently, entries sparse markers of continuity rather than confession. Personal growth framed as alignment habit refinement integration. Evenings unfold gently reading conversation, rest transitions smooth. Mornings begin gradually light, welcomed routines stable. Commutes contemplative movement, rhythmic familiar. Workplace greetings, warm names known histories, shared collaboration fluid. Humor understated inside references, bond colleagues gently. Mistakes addressed calmly learning integrated systems adjust. Urban landscape displays layered history architecture worn, but cared for patina respected. Public art maintained, refreshed, subtly continuity honored. Civic pride rooted in reliability, quiet confidence. International relations, steady diplomacy, routine cooperation normalized. Global awareness, present contextualized empathy balanced without overwhelm. Personal aspirations align with community needs fulfillment found in participation. Success measured by sustainability balance, quiet satisfaction. Natasha occasionally recalls earlier times marked by urgency fragmentation, constant anticipation. This current mode feels like inhabiting a long room with many windows light changing, but structure holding. Time now does not push it, does not pull it, simply exists as something to live inside. Loss when it occurs integrates community support rituals, gentle remembrance ongoing. Joy similarly, understated contentment, found in small consistencies. Weather forecasts, consulted casually plans, adapt flexibility habitual. Transportation systems, communicate clearly trust maintained. Maintenance crews, visible appreciated essential labor, respected. Public spaces clean orderly, without coercion. The sense of being held by systems persists, allowing attention to rest on living itself. Time continues without asking anything. The ending arrives the same way everything else has arrived here, without announcement, without a change, in lighting without a swell of music. And if you were not paying attention, you might miss it entirely because it does not declare itself as an ending at all. Natasha does not wake up on a final morning or close a final door or look back over her life as if it were a completed object. She simply continues living inside the same steady fabric of days, and that continuity itself becomes the closest thing to a conclusion. She keeps going to the institute not because she must, but because it still feels useful. Her role slowly shifts from doing to noticing, from producing to advising, from moving pieces to explaining why they were arranged that way in the first place. Younger colleagues ask her fewer questions over time, not because they need her less, but because the systems she helped stabilize now answer those questions automatically, and this feels like success even if no one calls it that. Her desk remains mostly the same, objects, worn edges polished by years of contact. She removes nothing abruptly, she adds nothing unnecessary. The space continues to function, and that is enough. Outside, the city continues its long, calm breath. Construction finishes somewhere else, begins, traffic flows, shops open, close, seasons rotate without commentary. The news reports events with context, voices, measured urgency. Rare people listen, nod, continue with their routines, informed but not shaken. Natasha walks her usual route, slower now, but not hindered. Benches are always where she expects them. The trees she watched grow now provide full shade, and this feels quietly satisfying, like seeing a thought fully formed. She meets Olga less frequently, but when they do, it feels unchanged. Conversation resumes midstream, no updates required. Shared memory does the work. Family gatherings remain simple meals, familiar recipes, nothing experimental, nothing to prove. Laughter brief, comfortable, silence long. Community notices her presence, but does not single it out. She is part of the background pattern, now a familiar shape in the environment, and that feels like belonging. Healthcare visits become more regular, but also more routine. Providers know her history, no explanations needed, adjustments made gently. Public infrastructure continues to support her pace, ramps smooth, signage clear, seating abundant. The world does not ask her to hurry. She reads more slowly, now rereads books, already marked margins, familiar passages, feel like meeting old acquaintances. No surprises, just recognition. Music plays softly, repetitions, soothing melodies, worn into comfort, novelty unnecessary. Journals remain sparse, entries few but steady, observations about weather, light, conversations, nothing dramatic, nothing unresolved. Evenings shorten, mornings lengthen, light changes, she adapts naturally. Curtains adjusted, routines shift without complaint. The city remains attentive, maintenance crews visible, systems functioning quietly, failures rare and quickly addressed. When something does break, it is fixed without spectacle, because everyone understands that repair is part of continuation, not an interruption. Cultural events persist, new faces attend, old ones fade, attendance shifts, but the calendar holds. Children grow into adults who already understand how to live this way, because they have always seen it modeled. Patience, continuity, care. Public discourse remains calm, disagreements exist, but are held within shared structures. Trust persists. Technology continues evolving, but never outruns comprehension. Updates, incremental training, provided confusion minimal. Environmental systems continue to recover slowly, not dramatically, but steadily. Green spaces, fuller air, cleaner water, clearer. Economic rhythms remain stable, people plan years ahead without fear. Basic needs predictable. Art continues being made slowly, deeply. Artists supported, time allowed, audiences patient. Recognition comes quietly, a small note, a mention, a handshake, nothing ceremonial, and that suits Natasha just fine. One day she stops going to the institute, not because she leaves, but because her presence is no longer necessary. The place functions without her, and she feels no loss in this, only confirmation. Her days continue, filled with walking, reading, listening, resting, observing the ongoing. Losses occur as they always have, friends depart, routines shift, but the structure holds memory integrated, not erased. Joy remains modest, found in warmth, sunlight, familiar, voices, small consistencies. Time does not narrow toward a point, it stays wide, accommodating, until attention simply rests more often. There is no final lesson, no summary, no dramatic last thought, just the continuation of being held by systems, habits, relationships, spaces that were built to last.